Alrighty, I think that.
Recording to logbook.
Oh shit! Yo, thanks, Robert. Hi, everybody. My name is Ian. I go by Alchemy on the channel. I am joined today, honorably, with Nolan, aka Frequent. How's it going, man?
Good man. Thanks for having me.
This is such an honor for me. Not even just because of like who you are as a producer and stuff, but like it's really interesting that I've been following you since like 2014, since like pretty much since you were a kid. I imagine. Isn't that when you
It's like
started
the
putting
very
tunes
beginning.
out?
That's crazy.
How long, like when you first started putting tutorials out, I think it was with like, was it Evoke? Like how old were you back then?
In 2014, well, let's see, that's almost 10 years ago. So I was like 24, something like that.
Well, how old are you now?
Or sorry, 14.
14.
I'm
Oh my
26
gosh,
now.
dude. You were just a kid. You still are a kid. That's fucking crazy. But
Yeah,
that's
I had to have started when I was like 11. Just like dicking around with software, and then by the time I got to high school was when I first like actually started trying. How old are you when you first get to high school? I don't even know.
if you right.
13, some shit.
Something like
Uh,
that. That's fucking
14.
crazy, dude. So I'm kind of curious. I would like to ask you this question really quick, and then I actually just want to talk about how people can reach you because that's actually one of the biggest themes that I wanted to discuss with you, and really just like show some appreciation. But I guess like when you first got started, did you teach yourself everything you know, or did you have a mentor, or
So, I mean, I definitely never had like formal education, but I can't really take credit for like teaching myself everything. Like I had so many people teach me things. The first mentor I ever had was this dude named Balthazar, who he
that's
was just some
awesome.
like random college kid that I found on Craigslist. And this is like before I was old enough to drive, so I had to be like, yeah, like 14, 15. And my mom would like drive me to this dude's house over by the Boulder campus, just like a shitty little apartment.
That's
And she would
insane.
like drive me there for dubstep lessons.
So like, were you
Uh,
just looking up dubstep lessons on the internet and found some dude, or like?
yeah, pretty much. I was just looking for
Wow.
like anyone, any music production in. You have to keep in mind, like Denver is a totally different place then.
Sort
Like
of. Well, like, all right. So I grew up in LA, which is, well, you don't do that in LA, but, but the thing that is interesting is that have you and I talked about the tricking community before and about how similar that is?
or
The
what do
the
you mean tricking?
So tricking is acrobatic martial arts. Actually, Denver has a huge community that I go and visit pretty often. But you see like kicks, flips, and twists and stuff. It's getting super popular on TV now. But there's a community out there, and the way that we all are is actually like we meet up, and then we started meeting on the internet, and like I would be hitting somebody up like, "Hey, I'm coming to visit," and they would likely, even if we've never met before, be like, "Yeah, come stay with us." So it's really cool to see that the music community is very similar in that way, if maybe not that open, but you know what I mean, something similar.
Oh, totally. I mean, yeah, nowadays, like, there's maybe too many people coming through my place and just Denver in general. So it's pretty vibrant. Like, if you wanted to teach, or rather, if you wanted to learn music production in Denver today, I feel like it would be like you'd have to really fuck up to not find somebody around you who could show you.
Have you?
But when I was growing up, like there's this scene was not here. Like there
Yeah,
was no halftime. That nobody gave a shit about neuro bass. Like there was no any of that. It was just dubstep, and the people who were actually making it definitely were not like on Craigslist giving lessons. You know,
that's so
so
crazy. Yeah, so and really like not well, I mean, shit, dude, like you were a pioneer not only for the scene or not only for Denver, but for the scene in general. We're kind of finding ourselves in a similar situation out here in Vegas. There's maybe like three producers I know that even do bass design at all. And it's kind of fun to have the ability to kind of like start a community, but I know how much work that takes, and it's really cool that which is kind of what I was getting to about how you not only opened the door on the scene, because I'm not sure if you started NeuroHop Forum or if you were a part of NeuroHop Forum or what role you had in that, but I know that you were there. I've read all those threads, you know, growing up and stuff. And it's cool now that you allow yourself to be so accessible. You've got a website, which is, there's a link in the description to where people can just book you for a lesson. And like,
Yeah.
that's fucking crazy. That's how I found you. Actually, I just sent you a message on Facebook. I was like, "Yo, Nolan, my name's Ian. Do you do lessons?" And you know, sure enough, like you've taught me so much that has like such a huge impact on like what I do today.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a huge reason that I am where I am is just because people like didn't guard the information. You know, like I owe everything I know to just the people around me and the communities around me, and even people who like actually. I remember being in high school and like messaging Disprove and like freaking out over like Disprove talking to me and just like asking him some like really basic shit about how he makes his sounds, and he just like I was way overcomplicating it, and he's like, yeah, you basically just like use a square wave, I don't know, just like saturate it. And I
Yeah.
remember him just like opening up my eyes that I was like way overcomplicating this process and like maybe putting this dude on a pedestal, and he didn't have to do that. Like I was just a random kid, but you know,
I mean,
all these people are pretty open.
and in a lot of ways, you know, I speak about you and the other people that I've learned from in the same way, but I guess like it might be maybe like once or maybe times have changed or something, but in the past it has been super gate kept and it has been all like hush hush and, you know, don't steal my techniques and stuff and this and that. And I don't know, I really just appreciate how you've had a different philosophical approach and how much, like, I don't even know if you realize this or not, but like how much influence you've had on today's electronic music. Like it's everywhere. Like even, you know, people in the chat are talking about sign compression and this and that, and like I almost can't. We have this saying in the Southwest called "You can't swing a dead cat without X, Y, Z."
Yeah.
Which is really stupid. I never got that, but I mean, shit, dude. Like, and even on Bass Gorilla, right? Like all the stuff that you've done on that, it's like it's fucking crazy. And that's actually one of the coolest reasons why I'm so happy to have you on here today is for one to just share my experience with learning with you and hopefully give some insight. Also promote you for one because guys, he has lessons open and he's got availability, so like grab him while you can. But I wanted to talk about like your direction, about how much you've evolved and how it's not just about bass music anymore, and how you've really branched out of kind of the stuff that we were talking about, of breaking habits, of getting into creativity, of really just exploring something to where it's like, well, we went super crazy with bass design. Now that's been there and done. Like, what's after that? What's after just the beats? What's after, like, where does music go from here from a humanistic standpoint? I don't even want to talk about AI, but you know what I'm saying? Just from like the self-expression.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, I mean, first of all, I think that like quote unquote bass music or neuro or halftime or whatever, like that whole genre is still like completely untapped. It's not like uh we left with every stone turned. Like I think a lot of what happened is that people kind of uh became less interested in innovation and more interested in like developing a standardized formula that works. Um, and that's fine, but as soon as it became that, like the whole kind of approach in the bass music scene stopped being this like nobody knows what the fuck is going on and we're all figuring it out type thing.
Yeah.
And now it's more of a go watch these tutorials and just do it type thing, and that's fine. I don't want to take that away from anyone. Like I think it's a good thing that the information's just there. I would be the first one to be like, here's how you just like make the bass. I don't
Yeah, that's what you do with
care
me.
about that.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is now there's not really like this concerted group effort to reach new ground. And people treat it like, you know, oh, we've figured everything out because they just do it the same way. But if you listen to stuff that was happening like 8, 9 years ago in that scene, like most of it is way more inspired than the stuff you hear now, just because the framework didn't exist and it was really like you had to put yourself out there in the, out in the cut where nothing's really established in order to kind of make something interesting. And nowadays, that's just not the case. Like there is a safe option, and as soon as there's a safe option, like the general curve is just gonna always gravitate towards that. And so for me, it's less just like, well, we did bass music, so now what? And it's more just like I don't derive the same inspiration from that scene in the way that I used to. I mean, it used to be literally all I cared about, so there's also that.
Yeah.
But like, uh, I just don't. It doesn't do the same thing for me. I don't feel the same like sense of wonder. I listen to a lot of stuff in that world, and it's like I've over optimized, and I just hear all of the like, oh yeah, there he goes. There's the white noise bass, followed by the tipper sound, followed by the fucking detuned saw waveries. And then all that just has like a kick and a snare and a hat. And like I can't not hear it that way. So
Yeah, on one end, do you feel like, like, do you ever go like, yep, that's me in there, or something like that, or like, yep, I know exactly what they were trying to do, or like the intent was so obvious?
most of the time. I mean,
Yeah.
also when you say like, oh, I hear me in there, or like you talk about like if I'm even aware of how influential what I have done is, I'm really not. Like I hear things that are similar to things that I either do now or used to do. Um, but I think all of that is also like pretty directly derivative of other shit. Like I was pretty blatantly just trying to figure out how to do the Cohen sound thing and just couldn't. And that's kind of what my sound at first was.
Yeah,
Um,
and you also got big around the same, well, pretty close to the same time that they got big too, though, I want to say. Like they were doing some stuff a
nah,
few,
they were way before me.
well, I mean, maybe a few years, but you also made your own sound from the stuff that you were doing. And I don't like when I say that stuff, like I don't mean as in like everybody's copying Frequent in the bass world. It's not, and I apologize if that's how it's coming off, but more so in the sense of like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be from you because it all came from somewhere, but just that influence, kind of like you were saying,
That
it's just
scene,
the,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, the
I
the
mean, yeah, I
scene.
hear it constantly. And I think like nowadays I'll hear songs that have the same problems as the Neurohop Forum songs had, but it's like, there's a decade of innovation and examples and tutorials behind it. So
Right.
um,
And
I sort of see, yeah, that influence leaking out all the time still, but it's a different era, There's not really there's no excuse for not knowing how to do this shit anymore.
true, it's all out there. And even people that have been producing for, freaking 6 months, a year, they're starting to come out with videos as well. And I wonder, like, do you feel that maybe the lack of innovation is due to consequence from just the availability and the tutorials out there? Like, do you feel like people would still be experimenting if, say, you or I never put out a video about bass design?
Oh yeah. Well, this is why I have, and I know we've talked about this a little bit in
Yeah, yeah,
passing, but
but it's for them, right?
um, I haven't released anything on my channel, and I'm going to soon. Actually, I'm like working on a bunch of content right now for my for YouTube and for my website, like stuff to sell. Um, but yeah, I think the educational content is like maybe in a lot of ways the problem. Like,
Yeah.
and this isn't to throw you under the bus
No,
because
no,
I've run into this same problem. But I think even people with the best intent uh don't know, and I see this in the way you've approached it, where you're like, well, I guess I'm just gonna start like streaming me making music because all of these individual components are just like, either already been done or are kind of just redundant from the perspective of like
yeah,
it's just
exactly.
another piece of fucking technical information, which may or may. Can I swear on the spot? I'm gonna do it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
dude, go for it. I
Uh,
don't care.
so, anyways, I think in terms of like the educational content, it like has kind of put people in this position where like, yeah, there's infinite information now, but especially if you don't know how something works, like there's no way for you to vet if that information is good or not.
Right.
Um, I wouldn't even say most of the information on YouTube is bad or like wrong. It's just absurdly specific and like does not apply out to every other situation. So,
Dude, oh my gosh. So, sorry, man. I didn't mean to interrupt. I get
no,
excited
go
when
for
when
it.
we chat and stuff, but like I cannot tell you how many times, and I'm sure that you do this with your students as well, of like stop trying to copy the patch and look at like the mechanics of how something works, and then take all that and like throw it out of the way, right? But how many times do you get people that are like, yo, how do I make something so specific, and like can I follow along, or like can you do this, or like give me the preset so that way I could just use it. And I feel like in agreement with that, that's one of the key major problems that I've run into with people. I've had people like try to like argue with me and tell me that like I'm a shill because I won't give them the preset. you know it's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck.
Um, I think honestly, a lot of the students I get are like, because this is what happens almost immediately, right? Is people are like, how do you make this sound? And then, like, I don't give a shit. If I can make it, I'll show you and I'll give you
Yeah.
the patch because it's worthless to me. But like, the main point I'm trying to drive home when I'm doing these lessons is people always hit me up like, how do I make this bass sound or something? And then I'm like, okay, send me your music. And then it immediately shifts from like, actually, like knowing this one bass sound isn't gonna do anything for you, dude. Sorry to
Right.
tell you that. But as much as I'm happy to show you and you're paying me, so like, here you go if you want it. Like, this is not even information. Like if you just understand how to like take something somebody's already made and use it in the same context as them, like at best you will get an exact replica of what they made, but on average what you'll get is just like a shittier version of their thing. So
Exactly.
there's not really like, and I run into this not even just from like, oh, people want have an example sound that they want me to show, but it's like trying to show people how I make my shit specifically. I would like give these techniques for how you like do these individual steps. But that leaves out the most crucial part, which is not like where do the knobs go, but what people actually want to know is not like where do I put these knobs? It's like how do you actually know why to put those knobs there?
Right. It's the
Like how
why,
did you
right?
think to do
Yeah.
that? Why
Why?
did you make those decisions? How was that intuitive to you? And that's non-transferable. Like I can show you how I do fucking anything, but I can't really explain to you how I know to do that. Because it's a habit. It's like all subconscious processes. It's like things that are the result of me just like making way too many decisions over way too many years in Ableton. So like now I
Right.
just know how to do shit in a
I
way that I can't really tell you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say like one of the things that like you tell everybody. I know this that you tell everybody because I've talked to some of your other students who have been my students or whatever or something in the past. Is that they say, or we say rather, there that I got from you was like really embracing that aspect of experimentation and really like whatever you think, whatever way that you have of doing things, throw it out of the way and try something new that you haven't even thought of, which on one end is very ambiguous. But one thing that I really like that I got from your lessons, and it could have just been where I was at with my production, is for one, you were always willing to work on something that I sent you and put your creative spin on it. But two, you gave me a starting point of saying, here is a frame, like not even a framework, but like here's a reference point rather, and here's all these different directions that you can go. Now you go explore. And from that, man, I've gotten so much from that, and that's one thing that I think that people can really get from you as far as like what makes you an awesome teacher, in my opinion. Because that's the same thing I would want to give to other people, since you can't really teach creativity, right?
Yeah, like you can't hand somebody creativity. You can like give people the means to be creative, but like
Recording
it's
to
ultimately
logbook.
on them, you know? Like
Yeah.
and this is the thing that sucks about teaching is like if you are already good at making music and you just need to know like how a specific thing works, I can show you how to do that all day long. That's easy. But if you don't know how to come up with a good idea, like that you're fucked. You know,
Yeah.
like I can't help. I can show you how I come up with a good idea. I can give you exercises to help you train yourself to be in a creative state of mind and do things you wouldn't usually do and start making improvements to your arrangement. And we can even talk about specific ways to address that. But at the end of the day, if you don't put in not only hours, but specific types of hours
Right.
towards yourself,
Uh,
it's all moot. Like it doesn't actually matter. I could show you anything and it wouldn't do anything for you. So,
Yeah,
um,
I was talking about
yeah,
that with Kunis on Monday about failing, but failing with intent, or really just putting, like you say, intent with your hours of like have specific goals when you are, utilizing your time.
yeah. Well, and the specific goals are meant to like, okay, we might as well just go into the whole thing. But
Cultivate,
like,
right? Okay,
say it again.
it's meant as cultivation, right? But sorry, just as a quick backtrack that's going to kind of circumvent back into this because I'm ready to dive into this too. But before I forget, when you say, I'm so sorry that we're jumping around. I just, when
You're
we,
fine. You're fine.
yeah, when we talk, I have a bunch of different things to say.
Yeah,
But
it's all good.
so backtracking for just a second, one of the very first things that you said at the beginning of the interview, you were talking about there's been a major lack of innovation, and I don't necessarily want you to be like super meticulous with it, or you could just say how you feel. But I'm wondering, like, what does innovating like bass music mean to you personally, or what what would you say to people outside of perhaps like just go experiment more, but like what would you say of like, because none of us know what that means, right? Like you're in such a state that you've been there, done that, and we know this because of what you've put out with your music, but like what does that even mean to innovate these days, like with that specific genre?
Oh, I actually think it's never been easier to innovate in that genre, because it's never been more rigid. So like all I mean by innovate is just like subvert the very obvious expectations that now exist. Because before those weren't established. So basically anything you did was novel.
Yeah.
Um, but now there's like an obvious defined formula, a structure, a sort of like I've heard most of the ideas done 1,000 times. I've tried most of the ideas a
Right.
thousand times. So it's like all the lowest hanging fruit is already it's been done to death. And this happens to every genre. Like this is not unique
Right.
to this little subset of music at all. But yeah, I mean that once you have that sort of like established pathway that people are treading, all you have to do is like just turn right and go up the hill instead, and that what does that mean? Well, there nothing specific. There's absolutely no way to quantify that, but what it means to me is like have your own personal spin on it. Like what made the music interesting early on is like all of it sounded completely unique to the people making it because everyone was using these super bootleg bullshit self-invented like homebrew techniques to make their bass sounds because nobody knew. There was no established metric for how. If you asked somebody in 2013 how to make a neuro bass,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
people would give you the dumbest answers, including me. Like I look back on the answers I figured out for myself then, and it's just like I just roll my eyes at it, and it's like so much effort for such a shit payoff. And but those processes I was doing were like so complex and so specific. Even if the sounds weren't very good, nobody else could ever make a sound that sounded quite like that. And neither could I. Like I couldn't now I could never make a sound that sounds like my shit in 2014 because I have no idea what I was even doing then, Because
Yeah.
I didn't even know what I was doing back then. So like
And it's interesting too because the
yeah.
technology has also like facilitated all of those processes over time that kind of make it like I think I do think that like technology is to blame as well. I mean shit, look at Faceplant, right? Like everything that probably somebody like you or me used to do by hand, you could just put a modulator on it and let it fly and then it's like, oh, there it is.
I mean, I think like like when I got into music, the meta was like massive and Pro Q1 and like
Hmm.
uh you know,
Yeah.
mostly, if I'm being completely honest, like everyone was super over-equipped in 2013. And if you go back and listen, like there's people who are doing shit in 2013 that's like way cooler than shit people are doing now. There's
Yeah.
people doing shit in the late 90s that's way cooler than shit people are doing now
True.
in halftime and neuro. Like the tools have been around. You really don't need much. People overcomplicate all of it needlessly, because that's the easiest thing to teach, right? Is like, well, here's just another way of doing this process.
Hmm.
But people who were actually figuring it out in the cut when there was no real metric to weigh it against, all that they cared about was like, does this sound cool to me or not? And no, there was no music to compare it to. There was no tutorial. It was just like you in a box making some fucked sound and being like, oh yeah, I like this. I'm gonna make this into something. And that's such a different, like you'll never have that again with this genre unless you shut yourself out from the world. But even then, you know about all of it. You know, you've heard
Right.
all my music. You've
You're
heard all of Cone Sound's music. Heard all of Culprit's music. Like there's no unhearing that. So it's like, uh,
you're
yeah,
tarnished.
I think the people who are doing the most interesting shit, especially the people who are innovating early on, it's not only that there wasn't a roadmap, but they just weren't even interested in that. Like they weren't trying to like rip the sounds from some other thing. They just figured out how to make the sounds themselves, and through that started making interesting shit. And I think that's all I did was like at first I was like, oh, I have to rip off this cone sound thing. And eventually, somewhere along the line, I realized like I'm just not gonna be able to do what they're doing, uh, because it's so specific. And now you know all this. That you literally can go to their Patreon and
And
give
learn
them twenty
exactly how to
dollars,
do
and they're
it.
just
Right.
like, "Here's exactly how you do it." And you're like, "Well, fucking goddamn! All right, there it is." I guess it's like you got to do this multi-band split and put like this filter right here and do like all this shit I never in a million years would have like just come up with organically trying to figure it out myself.
Right.
Um, but the realization there was like, oh, like I actually don't even ever need to figure out how they do it, because through trying, I've figured out all these other ways of doing my own way of doing this thing, right? And now nobody can figure that out, and people are coming to me being like, "How do you do this thing?" So like, it's really just a matter of you can find like, how do you make an innovative song? That's what this all started at, right?
Right.
Well, you got to make a song that no one could make but you, which sounds really hard, but realistically, it's like it's never been easier because most people are making music in the meta of YouTube tutorials and like the genre and shit that's happening in SoundCloud. But like, if you want to subvert that, all you have to do is not that, which is basically that's like most things. Like a whole infinity of things are not that, but that is, you know, the genre is a very specific thing, and
Yeah.
like obviously there's tons of different types of halftime and like subgenres and whatever, but you can tell in your heart of hearts when you start making something, you can definitely listen back to it and be like, okay, this is like some shit I've heard before. Uh, and there's nothing bad about that. Like again, nobody's obligated to like go and make innovative music. I think making genre pieces and just like making things that are relevant to what's happening here and now and like in the trends of today is like perfectly valid and interesting. And if I hadn't been doing it for so long, I'd probably be down to just like kind of do the thing. But like for me, yeah, that innovation just comes from like uh ignoring the meta essentially and looking inwards and just being like, well, what do I actually like myself, regardless of, you know, how this stacks against every other thing in this style. Like, what am I actually responding to? And this is where it gets into like you have to derive creativity from these other sources. You have to start doing something other than what you always do
Right.
and try new shit, and then when you go back to it, it's like, okay, well now I have all these new ways of executing this thing.
Yeah. And so
And that's all you need to do.
so that leads me to ask, kind of like circling back to where we were going from before this, you know, if you were to teach these tools, or if you were to even say like teach a master class or teach like the ideal, it could be a course, it could be, you know, just something to leave with somebody, like how would you go about, or what kind of things would you try to like instill in people to cultivate that from the beginning, as opposed to start off just by trying to make, you know, music like other people and, you know, this and that.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm actually working on a course right now, that I'm gonna sell on my website. That's gonna be like, because it's two parts. There's like two sides to this, which is one is like the technical information. Like that is still important.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
I think knowing how to use the shit is very useful, obviously. Um, but I also think so it's two parts. It's that, it's understanding like what is going on here on simple terms, like understanding like an FFT, understanding the harmonic series, understanding like partials and tuning, and understanding like timbre and Fletcher-Munson curve, and all of these like really low level things that are kind of annoying to understand, but also super teachable. Like you can just learn it on Google. Uh, and then from there, once you have the right foundation of information, that's just like super generalized foundational knowledge,
Recording
um,
logbook.
then it becomes like purely everything's just arrangement and creativity. Like that's all that's left to do. There's not really, like, most people are already at this point where they're like way over equipped with technical knowledge, and all that's really left is to sit down and like arrange a better song. So
Yeah,
uh
absolutely. I would buy
ideally
that.
to me it's like the technical information is just a means to an end. It's like
Yeah, it's
uh
just to achieve what the real goal of like making music is, right? Like if you have
yeah,
all the sounds that you like in a sample pack or something, then the only thing left to do, like you say, is to put it together. And
to a song.
right.
Yeah. And so the sound design, people get super worried about the sound design. Like, I mean, I did the same shit, so
What?
I get it.
Nah.
But yeah, it's just not actually that. It's not that hard. Like, it can be really hard. You can make sound design like insanely hard if you want, and you can go like full Autechre route and do everything in like max systems, and just like your whole process is just like designing fucking generative patches. But like you also can make sound design like really really easy and still sound crazy, but do everything in 5 steps and not worry about it too much,
Right.
and then completely dial in on this on the songwriting, and that's going to get you way way further than spending all those hours on the sounds and then just kind of using the same framework to approach the songwriting over and over.
And
um
I think that on that note, like one of the biggest questions, which is, I'm great that you even told us about this, because for one, this is a course that I would buy, you know, or that I would, you know, pay you for lessons, or, you know, like really just value that time and that energy on talking about that stuff. But the number one question that I get on my channel isn't even about, like you say, like basses and stuff. It's about how do I use XYZ in context. And you know, like the mud pie era or whatever of taking long cuts of resamples and like fishing and all that stuff usually leads to a lot of the same mistakes that I see about, like, you know, people trying to use too many sounds or trying to use that, thinking that that's going to be their whole track. And watching, like I was watching you stream the other day on Twitch, by the way, like twitch.tv/frequent audio, right?
Yep.
Which I need to put that in the description as well. Unfortunate circumstances, but for with what happened. But yeah, like watching you work within that and saying like it's never the end. It's never like just this sound. It's always something that can go beyond that, and how to keep making decisions is things that I can't wait for you to put in more people's hands, because of how powerful that is and how well it helps you get over usually a technical hurdle, but you also the creative ones of like, you got to keep writing, you got to keep making decisions, you have to just keep moving. And that's where I think you find yourself the most of your own personal thing, because that's where mistakes happen.
Yeah, and not even just mistakes. It's like this is where improvisation happens. Like if you allow yourself to just kind of like settle into routine, which everybody does by default, uh, in all aspects of life, not just
Yeah.
music production. But if you just settle into your habits, like you're essentially just kind of reinforcing the same decision making over and over and over again.
And then you make the same
Um,
song. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you make a slightly different song, it's like diminishing returns, and everyone hits this plateau, usually between the like 4 to 6 year mark, where their technical knowledge, is over spec, and their arrangement knowledge is under spec, and yet the arrangement is just kind of executed the same way over and over and
Shots
over.
fired.
And so there's like you get caught in this feedback loop where it's like you seek out knowledge to circumvent this, but then all of the knowledge that exists, including the information on my page, is not really like teaching you how to put things together in new ways. It's just teaching you new ways to make the parts. So like how, and again, you can't teach somebody how to have a creative idea. That's the whole fucking problem. Like, and I've tried to do something similar to what you've done with my videos, where it's like instead of just showing you the end result and then you know these knobs go here and people can just copy it or screenshot it or whatever,
Yeah.
it's really just like no edit, off the rip, like I'm gonna walk you through how I'm thinking about this, which is as close as you can get. But even then, I watch people talk about their process and things all the time, and I, at best, am able to walk away with like some small part of what they're thinking about. But you can't just suddenly like inherit somebody's personality by watching them do something they're good at. So,
Is there
uh, yeah.
is there any advice or any like perspective that you might have for maybe like content creators such as myself for like videos that would be helpful for somebody like you, even if like or something that would be helpful for everybody? Because I know that you can't teach what you're talking about, but even still, I think that it's important to even be thinking as a content creator of how to give better information and how to like part of the innovation is the information that's out there. So I would feel like it would only be natural to innovate on the information that's given as well.
Yeah, okay. So I'm thinking I like in the last couple of days have actually been thinking really hard about this exact thing because I'm making this course, right?
Right.
And this is going to be the first like education. The last educational thing I made was the toolkit, and this was kind of like trying to touch on this problem as well, where I wanted to make like a sample pack or Ableton rack type of thing, but it's the same problem with that, where it's like you're just getting the end result. And
Right.
like if somebody's creative, they can take those samples and do cool shit with it. But like those people don't actually need the sample then,
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
if it's not really helping people who need the help. So I decided like I'm gonna make all these cool Ableton racks, but then I'm gonna make videos around the Ableton racks that like explain how I got the idea for it, how I built it, so that you could build it yourself from scratch, and then like a bunch of different use cases for it, so that you're not just like pigeonholed into thinking about it this one way. And that was kind of like a good start, I think, in terms of like giving people a means to like, sure, you could just run with these racks and like maybe like you put it on a thing and it sounds cool and like that's all you want out of it, fine. But it also gives you the means to like, in theory, understand how and why all of those racks were made and 10 different ways to use all of them.
Yeah.
And that is a way better position than just like copy the knobs off of this patch. But
Right.
it still doesn't scratch that itch quite, because I still don't think like that still requires somebody to have a bunch of skills already to actually do something meaningful with it. So I think it does help like intermediate advanced people, but the people who like are feeling like there's some sort of like barrier or obfuscation between them and the technical stuff, I think that is a direct result of how the the foundations are taught. And so to me it's like I the main thing is like starting from this foundational level, and instead of talking like in the high level of like, all right, so you want to make a bass, we're going to open this synth called phase plant, and this is a wavetable, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and we're going to FM this wavetable. You hear that? It's like, I think that is probably the most like fun way to teach somebody how to make a bass if they like have very little experience in it, or maybe have like tried but don't really know how to do it well. Like that is, you know, probably going to help them have an understanding of like how to make this one specific sound in this specific synth, which
Right.
is getting somewhere. But like way more helpful than that is like completely changing the framework of how they think about sound design to begin with, from like building these specific frameworks and pathways of like, when I need this type of sound, I do this process. And then you have like XYZ that you do in this synth. Um, and more building just like a conceptual basis that has to do with, okay, so like FFTs, um, and how every sound is basically just a composite of sine waves at different frequencies. And then thinking about like how the human ear responds to sound. So like we obviously have this roll off at 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz where we can't hear anything above or below those values.
Hmm.
But we also have a pitch roll off where you can't really distinguish tones over around, and this varies per person, but over around 4,000 hertz, it starts to become really difficult to distinguish pitches.
Right.
So like the majority of our hearing range, you can't even distinguish notes within. And so, yeah, we have this like very uh, kind of flawed and uh, arbitrary way of l- interpreting sound and being able to hear what's going on, and then the way that everything is made is just literally a bunch of sine waves, and then the way that all the effects work for the most part, like 99% of them,
Just
is
delays.
just delays.
Yeah.
It's just clever use of delay. So with that information, and like obviously you want to go way more in depth than that, but like with this information of like fundamentally understanding how partials work and how everything is just a component partial in a moment, that's just like a bunch of frequencies happening at once, and how your ear responds to these frequencies in specific ways. And with that information, you can basically just sculpt any sound to be moving within these ranges in the way that you want. So if you want something tonal, you know you're going to have some resonant quality within the probably like 200 to 4,000 range. You know, if you want to have like brightness, you're going to have to like increase the shit that your ear just hears as noise, which is all of the high end. If you want to have you know, some sort of like interesting chord or tonal quality, then you have to think about how the harmonic series is interacting and how the partials along your spectrum are just like very specific mathematical intervals.
This is fucking
And
fascinating.
yeah, and I mean, and it's abstract, and a lot of it is like, you don't really, do you need to know what an FFT even is to make good music? Not at all. But when you teach people just like this shit that seems really complicated at first, but realistically is super simple, it totally changes your derivative when you're trying to like, uh, I don't know, just execute a sound. It stops being like, okay, I'm gonna recall like these 1,000 serum tutorials in my brain and just like try to procedurally create a path forward. And it's more just like
Yeah.
totally abstract, and like the way you can approach anything is super arbitrary and meaningless, and there's no actual right way or like real framework for doing it. It's just like
Y-
you are painting in frequencies over time, and you can do that however you want with whatever tools you want in whatever order. And these days in software, it's like you want to add 50 effects to this sound, like go for it.
Right.
You can do anything you want. So, yeah, I think once you take that, the like tunnel vision of these really specific subsets of sounds away, and you're just like, sound is just like this and you can just do anything. The challenge of making a bass stops even being like a real objective, and it's more just like, oh, I want some like cool tonal sound, and you just like go and make that. And that could be a bass or something someone calls a bass, or it could be like, a lot of times the first thing I do when I'm like making a sound is I'm just like moving around octaves all the time and being like, maybe this would be cool. Maybe like instead of a bass, I should just like play a chord, and I'll just like play a chord, and maybe even play a chord in like a super low register. And maybe that sounds cool. Or like, nope, that sounds like shit. Like, let's go up 2 octaves, try a chord there. No, all right, maybe try it like a lead sound. Maybe I'll make it plucky. You know what I mean? I'm just
Yeah.
like, the sound can just be anything. And it's not really about like what type of element is this. It's more just like, what is the quality of this element? And
Yeah,
how
is
does
it
it fit
cool?
into my
Right.
arrangement?
And I will say, like, if you all get the chance, please like go like watch him while he streams, assuming that you'll do more in the future, because like the stuff that he's talking about really comes into context when you watch how he works and continues to shape and work on something, you know? I mean, I sat there and watched you make this goofy tune for at least a couple of hours, and then you were like, okay, I'm ready to change the mood, and resampled that and started making something that was a little bit more of a vibe that you were going for, but you used the same stuff that you created. And it's not even just a matter about resampling, but I think what's so cool to watch is the intention. And that's something that I think is one of the harder things to teach. Is now I intend to take whatever the fuck this is and make it into something desirable in that way, while still leaving the doors open to like have something surprise you, or have something please you, or have something, you know, like inspire you, I think is the right word.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times it's like, I just need sounds, right? Like people think about this as like, you have to do everything with such intent and like think about it in really specific terms. And like, in some ways you do, but ultimately it's like, you just need some sounds and you just move them around, and you can really like
Yeah.
totally change anything into anything. Like if you aren't liking what you're doing, you can like take the same exact samples and like completely switch up the vibe really quick. And you saw me doing this where it's just like, I'm bored. I'll just like take these drums and like take these basses. I'll like pitch this up and I'll like turn the BPM up 30.
This is
And
like,
just see what
yeah,
happens.
this is like super oversimplified, but I mean, you said it yourself. Like you were saying, like at some point, even live streams don't become helpful because you're moving clips around. But I was thinking about that when you said that to me a while ago, and I was like, man, honestly, like the whole aspect of music production in general is you're either putting notes down, adding effects, or moving clips around. That's like
Yeah.
music making in its
You're
entirety.
just moving the squares around
Yeah,
in the timeline.
it's
And
fucking
whether it's
crazy.
notes or audio clips, like it's just composites of like at most just like multi-toned samples. But
Yeah.
again, that's all just like sine waves.
And I guess
So it's
like
just
if
yeah.
forgive me when I said like intention and stuff, I guess I just meant like you're looking for something, you know, not necessarily like, oh, I know exactly what I want and I'm gonna design it, but more of a sense of you're like, I wanna, let's see what happens if I turn this into this. Like I think you said that verbatim several times, or let's see what happens when I turn this into
No,
this.
you're right. And I think you understand this where it's just like the intention is to be creative. The
Yeah,
intention
yeah.
is to like work in this framework where you're not really concerned with it being a specific way until you hit on something, and then you're like, all right, that's what I'm leaning into. And that is intent in a specific way. But I think a lot of times people think of intent with like, I have some really specific idea in my head and it's just as easy as me translating it into it's really not like that. I mean, it can be like that, but that takes an insane amount of mental effort
Right.
for me, at
Me
least.
too.
But if I just want to make something interesting, like it takes no effort. Like That's why I'll just stream like that. I'll just open nothing and then just start doing things. And eventually, like, if it's not sounding interesting, just make it funny, you know? And if it's funny, you'll just be like, I don't know. If there's something that makes me laugh every time I hear it in a song, that just makes me like engaged with it. So that's why I put like the Scooby-Doo bongo in there.
Yeah,
And
that
then,
was super fun.
yeah, at the end of it, it's like I'll forget it's there, and then like I'll let the whole loop play out finally, and then the Scooby Doo bongo hits, and I just like laugh to myself a little bit. And I'm like, all right, we'll fucking keep going on this. So just these little nuggets, and then later that got scrapped, and like it became more of like a serious idea and less stupid. But like allowing it to be stupid gave me the framework to just like be inspired and create a bunch of interesting sounds and like contextualize them in some way. And that's all it is. Like you want to put yourself in a state where like you aren't like precious about shit until the thing is worth being precious over, which is like usually almost never. Like
Right.
you have to really like make something where you listen back and you're like, fuck, that is it. You
Yeah.
know, like that is the thing. You have to just be like sure of it in order to commit to being like, all right, now I just don't touch this, and I'll like pussyfoot around trying to make these little mix changes and make it nice, but like you're not going to do anything drastic. But up until you get to there, it's like you should be ready to just lose everything until then, which is why when the set crashed, I was just, I mean, I had people like messaging me being like, oh man, I'm so sorry your thing crashed, and like, and I appreciate that, but for me it's just like, do you have any idea how many of those
How
I've
long
made?
you do that?
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not stressing about it one bit. Like I really have to go into the session like I don't care about this at all, and unless it's becoming worthy of caring about. It's just like for the sake of making something and like discovering some new idea. And now, like, even though I can never listen to that song again, I remember the feeling of putting the whip sample in there and
Yeah.
being like, that is just so stupid. I
or-
have to do this for real at some point.
When you stretched out the wahoo, man, oh my god! So I was working out while you started doing that, and listening to that play in slow motion, it was like wahoo, like over. Yeah, that was so awesome, and I think that it's really cool because, like, on one end, it also like there's an interesting dynamic behind that too, about like if you were to watch a stream of production, right? Because going back to like, you know, moving clips around and stuff, is like what interests you if you were to watch somebody produce, or like what would be inspiring to somebody like you know? Would you watch somebody do like what you were doing in that sense, or you know, like
Yeah, that's like, so when you asked, like, one of the first things you asked me is like, have I had any mentors? And I mentioned Balthazar, but like realistically, my mentors have just been the people around me who are, you know, are inspired and doing crazy shit, and they have the same ethos of just like, and there's no like technique that is sacred, you know? Like if
yeah,
you're excited about something, I'm happy to show you how it works. And so with that mentality, it's just like, I can't tell you how much I've learned watching people make music who aren't me. Like honestly, a lot of my friends are way better at making music than I am. And so watching them do it, like I feel dumb a lot of times. Like I watch what they're doing and I'm like, oh, so this thing that would have taken me all this time to do, this guy can just sit there and like just do it in one go. Like one take, just make it happen and
yeah.
then just move on. And like it would have taken me so much fiddling and like thought to get to that same point, if I was even able to get to it at all.
And
And yeah, so I don't know. I'm super inspired by that, I guess, to
yeah,
answer your question.
sorry, I just wanted to chime in on that because like this hits really hard for me, because I remember when I first started doing lessons with you, like all the things that you just said about your mentors is something that I got from you know. I remember you were teaching me like a really cool concept about, you know, drawing inspiration from visual objects and how to create soundscapes with those and stuff. And I remember being so proud of it and sending it to you and be like, yeah, what do you think about this? He's like, bro, you're trying to do this all in one go. It's like, you know, I remember some of the advice. It was kind of a little bit cloudy, but even still, like I watched you do it all in one go. You know what I mean? And so like looking at you putting things together and stuff, I was like, well, shit, like maybe I could do that. But even still, to know that like you still have people that you are admiring in that sense, because like for us, like we don't really have we don't have that awareness or that insight about what it's like to be like where you are, you know. We don't know what we don't know in that aspect. And even for people like me, like I wouldn't say I'm nearly close to your level, but even for beginners that, you know, watch my channel, they don't know what they don't know that I do, and that kind of scales in that sense, but it never stops. It's always growth.
Recording to logbook.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not even a lack at a certain point. Again, the technical foundation is like obviously part of it, but like beyond that, I think like obviously if somebody's like a trained pianist, that gives them like a specific leg up.
Yeah.
Or like if you have perfect pitch and no music theory, that gives you a specific leg up. Um, but in general, like the limiting factor beyond the technical information of just like how to use the software generally, not even like when I say technical, I don't even mean like you're an insane audio engineer, sound designer guy. I literally just mean like you know what an EQ does. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
basic things.
Yeah.
Once you've surpassed that, you reach this point where, um, yeah, I don't know. There's not really. Again, it all bottoms out into perspective. Like there's not really like a limiting. Uh, like you, for example, are like plenty knowledgeable. Like obviously, because you teach people all the time. But like, uh, I think the only thing separating somebody like you from being like intermediate from being advanced is just like how you choose to think about it. It's not even a matter of like you aren't good at the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's the barrier for most people is like, yeah, there is like a few years of commitment to just like understanding what the hell is going on. But the other thing I've learned from my friends, a lot of them younger than me, um, is that you can reach, like you say, you don't know how it is to be where I am. And I don't even know what that means because I know, you know, kids younger than me who have been producing for like 3 or 4 years that sit down and do shit that just like blows me away. So
Right.
I don't know. Like I don't, and they don't even really know a lot of the technical stuff in a lot of cases. uh, they just kind of figured out a way of doing it and weren't ever worried about anything beyond that. And I think that perspective has just shown me that it's like I'm not. People put me on a pedestal, but like, uh, if you really look around and like take reputation and like the history of neuro and all of that shit out of the equation, like there are so many people maybe not in this specific niche anymore, but like there are so many people who are doing crazy shit with music, like way crazier shit than I'm doing, and they don't have recognition at all in a lot of cases. Like a lot of them don't even release music. They just do it. And it's insane. And nobody ever hears. And you're just like, yo, can I hear one of your songs? And they're just like, sure. And you're like, whoa. This is like a whole other universe that this guy created and just like doesn't even care about sharing it or like if it's ever like understood or heard or any of that. And uh so when you talk about like from my position, it's like I don't know, dude. I think I'm in basically the same boat as all of you, which is why I'm super happy to share the information. Like I don't think there's anything really special about me or anything that I can do. I've been doing it a long time, which helps, but ultimately, like most of that time was spent doing shit that was uh very marginally helping me. And in retrospect, with the right perspective, if I was just working on uh like doing the right things and executing things in a more specific way early on, I could have skipped like I would be doing way better shit now and I could have skipped a lot of steps. But I also wouldn't have, gone to do any of the stuff I did. And like my life has been pretty awesome and my career has been pretty amazing. So I would never trade it out for anything. But I
Yeah.
still think that like uh, the main differentiator between people who are really good and people who struggle are the people who are really good don't like seek uh, they like seek the bare minimum information they need to do what they want to do, and then everything else is just like brute force figuring out their own aesthetic in their own way. And then what comes out on the other end, even if the production is like not perfect at all, like the ideas are just so different from what you're hearing that it like transcends all of that. Like the mix is suddenly like, okay, yeah, this mix is kind of weird, but also like this song isn't even like in the world of things that are mixed in the way I'm used to. So it doesn't like the mix just becomes part of it.
Part of the artistry.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's fun. It's like unless it like hurts your ears in some way, then
Yeah.
it just becomes like an aesthetic choice like everything else. And so
That's
I don't
some,
know. Does this making sense?
Yeah, absolutely, man. This was something that you actually said to me last year on a chat that we had because I remember I sent you a tune and I was like, "Hey, like would you mind taking a look at this mix stuff?" And you were like, "Honestly, like just make like focus on compelling ideas. Focus on, focus on making, innovative innovative pieces of music and stuff." And I think that it's really easy to get caught up in trying to have production value and stuff, but I think that it's hard because and maybe like I don't know, maybe you disagree or agree, but there is this aspect of like playing the game. I feel like some people fall into because it's really hard to make it just by experimenting and trying to innovate. And that's a whole different thing to me because you kind of have to conform at least to some extent. I mean, look at all the people like trying to make like trap and shit, trying
Dude,
to
look at my whole career. It's not like I haven't conformed. Are you kidding? Like, you think I haven't made a tipper sound, boy? Like,
right,
you
but
think
you
I
know,
wasn't out there like trying to ride the wave of Cursa hype and like do the whole neuro thing? Like, I get it. And again, I had so much fun doing all of that, and I continue to have so much fun doing all the shit I do now that it's like it's not that that's even a negative thing. Like the word conform like has a really negative connotation, and like I used to carry that negative connotation as well, and be
yeah,
like spiteful of people in halftime for like, you guys gave up, you're not innovating, everyone's just
failure.
like, bleh. But like at this point, I what I understand about it is it's less about that, and it's more like this is like a whole community and ecosystem that just is a really specific thing. And if you identify through only that, then like yeah, it gets really frustrating when the whole thing is one thing. But if you just appreciate it as like just one thing on the side that just exists as its own world, then like I don't know. I really do enjoy playing into the restrictions of like this song has to just be fun for a room of people. And then also toying with that expectation and like making people sit through some shit that makes them uncomfortable or maybe makes them like feel something like completely different than just like head nod type shit, but like maybe something emotional or something really
Right.
abrasive or whatever to like change that pace up. But like that is a fun thing. And I think as long as you just realize that you don't have to entirely identify through that, uh, and you can do anything else you want to do at the same time,
Right.
uh, that's the real difference. And I think through making like the music I'm making now is just like so scattered. Like I have anything from like really stupid dance floor stuff to like really intricate experimental stuff to just like beats that I've made in like a hotel or whatever,
Yeah.
and like all everything in between. So like through doing all of this different stuff, when I go back to make like a banger song or just like something dancey, I only go into that space when I'm feeling inspired to make something in that space and I have some like motivation to do it. And then it's fun and it's engaging and it actually feels like I'm doing it with some purpose. Not like, oh, I'm going to make some meaningful song. Never that. More just like, oh, I have this like I have a stupid idea. I got to try it. Like this will
Yeah.
be fun. And then I go in there and I like maybe that idea doesn't work out, but I stumble into some little thing that just like makes me giggle a little bit and makes me start like bobbing up and down in my chair and I'm like, all
And
right, this is something, you know?
yeah, and that's like one of the that's why I say like that's one of the biggest differences between you know, even somebody like myself and you, is that we like it does take a lot of time, at least in my like experience, to even get to the point of how do I make something that does motivate people to move, or make like even making a banger. Like I talked to Hudson about this a long time ago. He's like, making a banger is easy, and I'm like, bro, what? Like it has been the biggest, one of the biggest challenges of my life. So to hear you speak about, you know, it's not even about that anymore for you, of like, yeah, okay, I've done the banger thing, now I'm doing other things, or maybe I'm going to make a banger but I know how to break expectations. That's the kind of awareness that I say that really kind of like like gives this chat that we're having purpose, right? And that's why I like hearing from you, because there's so much more to music beyond that, but also like there were steps that led up to it. It wasn't just like, oh, you were there. It was like you went through this process. And you know, of course you can't necessarily teach it, but it's nice to know like how you navigated from one aspect to the other, and about how you can still bring that element back but also feel comfortable exploring other things, because I feel like a lot of artists don't even like explore different genres, which leads into something else that you told me the other day, which is what was it, if you want to get good at halftime, then make everything that's like not halftime, or something like that, paraphrasing.
Yeah, no, I mean that's it. That's like the irony of this plateau. Like again, this is something that has just been like so clearly defined and solidified for me in the last like 2 to 3 years as I've really figured out what is going on with people. Because the people who hit me up for lessons are usually in the same spot, typically. I mean, obviously there's deviations from this, but like the average person that's been hitting me up for lessons is, you know, 4 to 6 years into production, roughly, and has hit this plateau where it's like they know how all the shit works and like they can write a pretty good song, but they can't write a really good song. And they want to like break that threshold into making something that like they're really feeling inspired by. Um, and that's like probably the toughest like I think that happens naturally in every skill. And
Yeah.
I think I've finally like identified an entire framework for like why that happens and um, how to circumvent it, which is what you're talking about, which is basically turn around and do the exact opposite thing, ironically. Like, yeah, if you want to get really good at writing halftime, go make completely unrelated music for a while and you'll learn so much more from that. Even just doing that a little bit. Because like once you've made halftime for like 1,000 hours and you've built all of these really rigid frameworks around it, making your 101st halftime song, like at that point you're basically just, you know, driving those habits into the floor. Like you just are continually building deeper and deeper pathways in your subconscious mind that are just doing the exact same shit. So you're learning in insanely low margins where you're experimenting slightly, iterating very slightly on this already very defined rigid process. And so to circumvent that, it's like you have to put yourself in a space again where you aren't attached to what you're making, and your goal is not to make your favorite thing. Your goal is to make something that like completely challenges the conventions of everything you know. So like if you make halftime and I tell you to go write bluegrass, uh you're fucked probably.
Oh yeah.
but maybe not, you know? Like, you technically know everything you need, you know? It's just like you probably can't, like, pick up a guitar and do, like, play some crazy bluegrass riff. So now you got to think about how are you going to circumvent that? And that's going to open up a whole, like, this is just a question you're never going to have to answer otherwise. And so by doing it arbitrarily, you activate this part of your brain that's like, all right, I no longer have an automatic response for this. So I'm going to have to, like, be a person and in real time problem solve this really arbitrary thing. And the more you do that, just put yourself in a corner where it's like, all right, I have to do X thing. Doesn't really matter what it is. And I don't really have the skills to do it. Or I don't know an obvious solution for this problem. Then suddenly you're doing a different thing. You're no longer just reinforcing those habits over and over. You're A, creating new habitual spaces, which is like, you know, you're finding new potential. Like, okay, I've learned that I can, you know, use a convolution reverb that will make this really artificial sound a little more realistic.
Right.
And I can apply this across all of these different contexts now. Sure, that's just like a thing you learned. Great. But the more important thing that you're learning is like a more hierarchical habit, which is not to just give a prescriptive solution to every problem. So like, if your kick sucks in a song, your brain is going to give you an immediate like, and this is going to be different for every person, but like, you'll listen to the song, you'll be like, this kick sucks. One guy's going to be like, all right, I'll just get a new kick. No problem. One guy's going to be like, all right, I gotta synthesize this from scratch to make it good. Another guy's going to be like, oh, I just got to put a transient shaper on it. You know, it's like everyone's going to have some default low level baked in response to whatever the thing is. And through that response, if you just accept it and do it, you're basically just a machine, and you're just kind of spitting out the first thing your brain gives you. So by doing this exercise, what you're creating is like branching habit structures. So instead of like, oh, this kick sucks, and you just like do the default thing that your brain gives you, you're like, okay, this kick sucks. How could I fix this? I could change the sample. I could pitch it up. I could use a transient shaper. I could use a compressor. I could use a distortion. Maybe I could try synthesizing a layer over this. Maybe I could try layering another sample over this. Maybe I could just use texture. Maybe, you know, whatever. You should have a million ideas for how to fix it. And instead of like just accepting that default impulse, you have just a few seconds of pause where you're like, all right, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? All right, brain, give me a spread. And your brain's just like ding, 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 ding. And you're like, today I'm choosing this one. And then you do that. And it's for every problem, you have a range of solutions. And this is basically allows you to do anything you want. So then when you go back to make halftime, it's like, oh, I need a bass sound here. And instead of like, all right, here we go, open faceplant, wavetable. Okay, now I'm going to open another one under here. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to enable FM. I'm going to FM this new wavetable to the first wavetable. I'm going to change the wavetable. And you have like this whole specific thing. You're like, okay, I need just like some sort of tonal thing here. I could do that in operator, faceplant, serum, vital. I could do this with corpus. I could do this with a sample. I could do this with all these different starting points. And then with all the different starting points, it's like, okay, I could like take note follower and I could pitch track an EQ that has a spike on it under an OTT, and then it's going to create this like harmonic sweep, and I'll create a delay on that so like it's staggered, and then I'll sweep a bunch of fast notes through this delayed, you know, just like starting to make some stupid contraption. And this is just some really arbitrary like, this is actually kind of how I made the sound in the Cosmic Tuba remix, is I had this like note follower on a EQ that was like staggered off of, like it just lagged behind a little bit, and that created this weird motion as the notes changed.
And that's really cool. sorry, just to kind of chime in too. But you wrote some stuff to me. I think it was on Wednesday or so about like talking about what do I always do, what do I never do, and all this. And what's really cool about this example is that, which leads me to a different question here in a second. But what's really cool about this is once you understand the mechanics of sound design, you understand what it takes to create those kinds of tones. You understand what it means to, find something of that nature. And you can say, kind of like you were saying, of instead of just going in and redesigning something in the same way that I always know how, I know that I can create sound, or I know that I can shape harmonics, or create noise, or create material, I think would be the umbrella term, to get the result I want. And maybe if I want something different or I need something different, then I need to find a different path to how to make that happen. Which does lead me to the question though, like, do you ever find yourself fighting with that, with a matter of efficiency? Because like, I know that that kind of becomes a different goal, but I feel like that would be kind of hard to navigate sometimes between trying to like maybe get a track down versus trying to just explore. Like, is your whole entire process always purely about exploration, or like, I don't know, how do you navigate that?
Well, yeah, so that's like that's definitely a big part of the whole. So I talk about this framework of like productive mind versus creative mind.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that there's a balance there, right? Like it's good to want to, like, first of all, in order to be good at anything, you need these habits in place. So like to have um a habitual structure that allows you to make decisions that lead to an end result is good. So if you have the habits to make even like a decent halftime song, for instance, as our arbitrary example, like that is definitely a useful skill, obviously. You know what I'm saying? And so, and not only that, but it's also like healthy to want to make music that's in the genre of your favorite artists, and like to want to be involved in those communities and play the shows and do all that. Like I think all of that is good, and wanting to finish songs and release them and be on labels and all of these things that people just kind of inherently want. Um, I think that's good. Like I think that drives you to actually make shit happen and release and become
Yeah.
involved.
Primary
So
motivator, right? Yeah.
yeah, like it's definitely part of the whole experience, and it's not a negative thing. But it's limiting in that if you just default to that, then again you just like solidify those habits.
Gotcha.
But I think on the flip side, if you're always in this, again, I know people who are like this, people who just like don't actually care about that at all, and don't even really care about if their music is good or if it's ever heard or if it gets saved or anything. They just kind of make it for the sake of doing it.
Hmm.
Even if it's really good, it's like they never will have like a career with it. Nobody will ever know. Like it'll never be really like realized into some sort of thing. It's just gonna sit there. And that's fine. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with either thing. Like I think both of those are like in different ways, completely healthy ways to engage with music. Um, but I think the reality is that there's a sweet spot in there of like you want to spend a good amount of your time in this creative space. And through that, you just start getting way more results, anyways. And then once you isolate those results, so like basically the spot I'm at is I have like, a gazillion things I've written. Of those gazillion things, I've bothered to render out like maybe 30
Yeah.
to
Fraction.
40.
Right.
Yeah, they're just like some of them are like whole songs, some of them are just like 30-second ideas. And a lot of them maybe I'll never finish or do anything with, but the idea is that I can now go back to all of those and salvage something out of it, whether it's like take a sound or finish it or whatever, do something productive with it. But I think ultimately like the line is blurry. Like there is a point where you have to be like, all right, I need to finish this and like get all the final mixes in and get the artwork and distribute it and post on Twitter and all that
Mm.
shit. But like most of what the process is just like making content in general. So if you're doing that, you're kind of doing the right thing. And if you start with this framework of like, I'm going to be detached from the material and just be creative and accept that a lot of it's going to be shit because I'm going to just be doing random, almost meaningless things in the pursuit of unexplored territory. But pretty quickly, when you start doing that, you start making your best shit anyways. And then those processes become like kind of intertwined where it's like I'll sit down like I did on Twitch. Like I could easily just sit down and eventually get a good idea. If you just hand me Ableton for long enough and I just keep trying random shit and trying to have fun with it and be engaged with it and like completely switch vibes if need be, just keep pivoting until I find something that I'm engaged with. Like I can always find an idea in there.
Yeah. Well, I saw it
So
happen.
it's yeah, it's less about being attached to it and more just about like creating space for that to happen as much as possible. And then when that does happen, it's easy to just like pick through that and then, you know, in a productive mindset, be like, God, I gotta go fucking change the snare in this and like
Right.
extend this section and do all these logistical things to it. Like that's fine. But I think a lot of people spend and I'm so guilty of this, especially early on. They spend all of the effort to make sure they just finish something, and then by the time it's done, they just don't even care about it. And then even if it gets released like a year later, they're just kind of like, "Fuck that song."
Yeah,
So
because it's
like,
played out to them.
yeah. So I think it's only worth investing that effort in things that you really care about, and instead of making every song the thing that you really care about and like trying to force it to be that, you just kind of organically have fun with it and like do what's engaging for you,
Yeah.
and experiment a ton outside of your normal region, and eventually like you'll just start making stuff that's interesting.
I
And
really
once
like
you
that
have stuff
mindset.
that's interesting, it's, I don't know, like
Yeah.
you just finish it, I guess.
No, I totally, man. I really like that mindset. And it's a good reminder to like, even when you've been producing for as long as you have, like, I think that one of the biggest things that I appreciated so much from that stream, because I think that's the first time I've ever actually watched you stream. I know that you've done it before in the past, but what was so cool was like you were like laughing at these sounds, you were still in this like playful mood as opposed to being like some old jaded producer that's like, in the exact opposite of what you're talking about of like, nah, it sounds like shit. I gotta, you're just like, oh, that sounds so stupid, and then like you made something else and you were laughing at it. And I think that having that attitude with what it was that you were doing also, for me as an audience and the viewer, also stopped caring about what you were doing because I was laughing and having a good time because you were laughing and having a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And through that, it's like maybe the result of it is like not the best, but as you saw, like that, that was like kind of a compartmentalized example of that. And I don't really do that every time, but like I noticed that like, okay, I have through this silly idea all of these actually kind of crazy sounds that I made. So I'll just resample it out really quick and then make a different idea. And it just shows that like through just fucking around and having fun, there was something useful in there. Like there were these actually like utilitarian sounds that I could pull from that and arrange something out of, and like to completely vibe switch into something more serious,
Yeah.
or not even serious, but just like I
Something
don't know,
something more,
not a shit post.
I guess, like, yeah, it wasn't something that we were laughing at anymore. It was like, oh, okay, this is kind of, like this. I don't know how else to say it, but it was like something that sounded like it came from you, with like it sounded like you were starting to make a frequent tune.
Yeah,
And even then, that goes to show with like that idea about like intent, though, right? Of doing that, of being able to. It's a quote from Bruce Lee, and I hate quoting Bruce Lee. I think I told you why and all that stuff. But play serious. And watching you do that, and watching you have that mental shift and start doing that, what was really interesting was it was the attitude behind it, because you weren't doing anything different, right? Like you might have had a different sound palette when you started to shift, but you were still doing the same stuff of resampling and finding cuts and adding effects or being like, I wonder what happens when, which I think is really the key of today, is I wonder what happens if I do X, Y, Z. And having this huge repertoire of what you did, because you didn't just do one thing, right? It wasn't like you went here, 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 here. You sat on several sounds for like 20, 30 minutes and then was just like, nope, 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 nope. That's really funny. Nope, 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 nope. But you navigated through all that, but you still managed to have a good time doing it. At least it seemed like you were having a good time. I was having a good time watching,
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's, I think for a while I actually wasn't having fun anymore because I was just like, all right, it's time for me to make the most serious music in my life. And I started like, from feeling pressured by the people around me who are doing like really meaningful stuff with their music, and I just felt like I was kind of like dicking around.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show that I could do serious stuff still.
So,
But through that, and then like doubling down on the idea of like, oh, like bass music gave up or whatever, like it's not interesting anymore, and like being really sour about it, and just kind of being down on music in general. There's definitely this period where I just like, it wasn't fun anymore. It was like, now this is my identity and I have to make it really serious.
yeah.
And that sucked. Like, I think I still want that out of music. And there are moments where I feel drawn to making music in that way. And I have a bunch of music now that I'm happy with, that like actually hits on something more personal or more just like
Yeah.
psychedelic, or just like, yeah, it's just something more potent musically. But yeah,
we
sorry, what?
no worries. And I'm sorry, dude. I try to find like spaces to like, chime in and stuff without. So if I'm coming off as
Oh,
rude,
you're
I
all good.
apologize.
No worries.
But when you said some of those things, I guess it was like 2-3 years ago now, though. Like I didn't really perceive it as a negative thing. I think that it was more about, I was actually excited when you said that because I knew that you were looking in a different direction than no one was. And that's why it's exactly why I wanted you to come on the channel, because it's not about how to make amazing bass music. And that's why I've been doing philosophical things, because it's all mindset. It's not about, how do I make this bass? How do I make cool beats or whatever? It's about how do I, like, who are you as an artist, and what do you care about, and where is your direction that you're heading? Because that's the stuff that is really going to take us the furthest, I believe. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And in that aspect, I think that, it's okay to be fed up with, seeing the same thing over and over and over again. It's okay to like, not even necessarily like hate on it, because that's not the vibe that you gave off, but being like, hey, like, let's do something different, or I'm going to do something different, or here's a different perspective, or something which you've given, because you are helping raise the consciousness of your community, because you are part of the community. You're a huge part of it. And so for the person that has been a major, has played a major role to change that kind of stuff, it's exciting. And it means that like you're ready for something new. And that means that I want to be ready for something new. And that's why I'm excited for like what you're going to be putting out, because I know that it is different than what it is that you're doing. And I care about like Frequent as like the individual, as opposed to, oh, well, you made bangers in the past, so that's what I expect from you. And I think people should let go of that, because it becomes so much more about the individualism, as opposed to, well, do I like this song or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, yeah, that's a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, dude.
um I'm trying to unpack that a little bit. Yeah, I think in terms of like the way like my role in the community, or whatever, I guess. I mean, I used to feel, yeah, like I had this like incentive to be like, oh, come on, everybody, like, let's make crazier music. And I felt like a lot of my friends for a while were kind of just like either stagnating or like pivoting into stuff I didn't care about. And I was like, come on, everybody, like,
Yeah.
let's get serious with it. or whatever. I don't know. I just had like I wanted it to be hard again. I wanted to feel like I did when I was a kid and be like, yeah, all right, now we have these narrow bases, but like now how do we do something that just sounds like impossible with it? Like
Right.
I don't know. And I honestly felt that way because I didn't know how to do it myself. And like, I wanted to feel that spark again where there was just like some obvious thing to look up to. And I think Tipper was probably the closest thing I ever found after that, where it's like, here's a guy that's just doing like his own, that's like its own thing entirely. And it's really like fun and self aware and just like nobody can really do what that guy does. I'm into that. That's kind of like the inspiration I've been looking for in a lot of ways. But like e- even beyond that, I don't think now that the community is more established around upscale and there's like honestly an overwhelming amount of inspiring music being generated around me, I'm less so like hey everybody please come do interesting stuff, and I'm more like I mean if people who want to do it are going to take the initiative. It's never going
Right.
to be like something you can convince people of, and a lot of people aren't even interested in doing that with music, and I don't think like I should impose my desire to innovate or like do something new. Like that's not all there is in art, you know. It's not
Right.
always about finding the next thing. Like there's plenty to iterate on and people derive a lot of enjoyment from it. And some people are just like, yeah, but like I just make beats and it's fun. So like have you ever considered that?
Yeah, who are you to tell me
Damn.
about my artistry? Yeah, I get that, but and you're right. And who is anybody to tell anybody about like what art and what art is? I guess it hits a little different, or at least for me, right? And that's just this is just my relationship to you, but it hits a little different for me because you innovated on something, at least to me, you innovated on something before, and now you are talking about being interested in doing it again. And I'm not saying like, oh, you're gonna, make the next Neurobase or whatever, but it's just really fascinating and exciting to hear that you are trying something different in the same way that you would want somebody like me to. And I'm hoping that that creates a feedback system. Like you say, that like upscale is already doing it, so you don't need that from me. But upscale and the people that you look up to are already doing it, and that way, hopefully, it does give you that same satisfaction of, you know, of the best of both worlds, right? Because you can still enjoy, like you say, like contemporary music or music that's been made or same ideas, or maybe it's slightly different. We like play games that are remakes. We watch movies that are remade. That even though it's the same idea, the stories are the same, but the telling of it is a little bit different. But for me, I'm always looking to get better. I'm always looking to grow. And when somebody says, "Hey, I'm looking to grow," that makes me go, "Well, shit. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, where are you going? And
Yeah, yeah.
how can I like get on that same path, or how can I explore or walk at least part of that path with you? And maybe I'll find my own thing along the way, or maybe I'll, you know what I mean? Or maybe I'll find something new that inspires you." Because that's to me what the community is about. That's how it's always been for me, and that's why I started a YouTube channel. Was I'm doing some shit and I'm playing catch up in a lot of ways, but maybe here's something that makes you go, "Damn, that was really cool." And then you do something with that, and then you give it back and you're like, "Yo, check this out." And I'm like, "Damn, that's really fucking cool." And it suddenly becomes like, I think that's every producer's like goal or desire within a community, at least if you want to be a part of the community. It's how I am anyways.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, and that's kind of what makes the difference at the end of the day is just the people who actually want it are the people who will do it, and the people who don't want it that bad will eventually just kind of taper off and be like, yeah, yeah, I'm good, and
Yeah.
either just like chill with what they're doing musically or like not do music anymore or whatever. Like I've seen every variation in between, but the people who actually are invested in improving will always improve. And
Right.
this is why it's like I'm happy to come on this channel, and like when I met you and started seeing like what you're trying to do with your community and like the way you actually like listen to what people teach you and internalize it, and then like give that back to people. Like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, this guy gets it. Like, that, sure, that's a person who actually is invested in the growth of, you know, people's artistry and making more personal art and making more like unique music across the board. But I guess I'm just not really like, uh, I'm not as invested in convincing anybody anymore because I've realized that there's more than enough people who are just willing to do it, you know what I mean? Or at least willing
Yeah.
to try. And those people will just kind of naturally gravitate into the thing at like people like you. And for those people, it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything you want to know. I would hope I can help you any way I can. I would hope I can help anyone who actually cares.
I made it.
And just give them the knowledge because I wish that existed when I was starting, you know, like I think
Yeah.
any leg up you can give people is just uh for the betterment of art at the end of the day. So, and more than that, just ultimately like the art is what you start for, but you stay for the people. Like you think it's all about making crazy music, but then you realize that you're not even inspired by like the end result of a thing necessarily as much as like you become inspired by your friends as people and their dedication to what they do and like the context of their personality and their interests and the way it like shines through their own art and the way that their entire aesthetic is kind of like the basis by which you know them and interact with them. But ultimately, like knowing people is way more valuable than just making music in a box to me. Like, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to
Absolutely.
share it with everyone. So
And to that note, like, you know, if you ever want to come on the channel again, or if you would like to, you know, if there's some way that I could share my community with yours, because I will say, like, you know, I'm not upscale or anything, but the people in chat and the people that I surround myself with are, a lot of them are like you in that sense of, you know, not the technical stuff and not the output, but just in the matter of we want to get better. And so, you know, long story short, like those doors are always open, and like it's always an honor to just like be able to talk about you on the channel and to be like, hey, we can reference you as like you are an elder of this channel, in a weird way. I don't know if that makes sense or not, right? Because of
it does. It's crazy to me, but
yeah,
like it's really cool. And to think anyone cares is just like, yeah, I never thought people would care. So,
I
yeah,
care.
more than happy to come tell anyone who's interested anything I know. And I think more than that, it's like the upscale community is like the most valuable asset I have, and any success I have is more than partially attributed to just being surrounded by people who, you know, will just tell you anything you want to know and are absurdly talented.
Yeah.
And through that, you know, life just gets a little easier all the time. And I think anybody who's just like invested in information and bettering themselves and like truly uh, trying to make art for themselves in a way that's like not even selfishly, but just make it in a way that is like unique to their persona and like their influences and their perspective and their
Fulfilling,
preferences,
right?
you know?
Yeah,
That's all
fulfilling.
it is. Like it's never about making the best music. Like if you listen to a lot of the music we release, it's like from a technical perspective, maybe not perfect.
Right.
Like it, if you go listen to the new TEDx Hexer album, it's like there's so much like weird shit going on in that mix wise, and it's like intentionally uh like really scuffed sounding in a specific way.
Mm-hmm.
That gives it this kind of like homebrewed aesthetic. Like it just sounds like Yen's like handmade all of this stuff in a way that nobody else would. And it just kind of uh lives in this space that completely immerses you, and that's all it is. Like I don't think it's about anything more than that. And like that could be through anything. You could have like I think Cohen Sound still is a great example of how like you can take a neurobase, that idea of like, oh, it's neurobases, but you can actually make it really musical and immersive and impactful and controlled and compelling and like unique to their style, and it has like a flow to it and like a, I don't know, it just like built, it's a whole world. They're doing like world building of their own little thing.
Yeah.
And that's all it is to me. It's just like, are you making music for yourself? And if the answer is yes, then all of this technical like specific shit kind of goes out the window, and it's more
Exactly.
just like, what is preventing you from executing your ideas, if anything, and just deal with that. And
Yeah.
uh, a lot of times, what that really is just like arrangement, and
My
um,
yeah, my
yeah,
partner has said some really profound stuff. She's a classically trained composer, and she says that composition over the past few hundred years hasn't really changed. It's really just the technology. And the more I get into music and the more that, we have chats and stuff, I really feel like that there's so much truth to that. If you look at a song in general, like everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, or a story, or something of the sort. And like once you understand that, and you understand like good songwriting and stuff, which you can't necessarily teach, but you can pick up quite a bit, it all does really become kind of the same thing, but you just put your expression into it, and that's where the uniqueness comes out.
yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, that's why it's so overthought, is because it's not really about having specific techniques. It's just like, how can you
Tell a good story.
execute some
Yeah.
idea in your own way. That's it. And that could be anything. Like it could be something like really meaningful and like story built. It could be something really experimental and like breaking the rules of traditional
Yeah.
whatever. It could be something super on the nose. It could just be straight like, I'm gonna make a rhythm song, right? But
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a rhythm song that just sounds like no other rhythm song you've ever heard, and is like nobody would have ever thought of it.
Right.
All
And
right.
and thinking
Well,
about like
that
what that
now you have
is.
my
Yeah.
attention. What does that
Right.
sound like?
Exactly. That's super cool. I do kind of want to pivot, if that's okay. I do have a
Sure.
relatively shallow question for you, as we've been talking about nothing but going off on the deep end. And maybe it's not super shallow, but I'm kind of curious. Like, when you do collaborations with people, what inspires you to like want to put your creative spin on a project of someone else's, or like even the opposite way? Like, what inspires you to, or like what motivates you to like send something to somebody? Because I don't know how you guys collaborate in general, to be like, hey, I got this project and I think that you would be really cool to work on this. One example is Zane. Yeah, Zane Wolf, really awesome guy,
Yeah, of
physicist.
course.
He was in here earlier. He comes by quite a bit, but I sent him something earlier today, or a few days ago, and I sent him this story, and I was like, I'm not saying it's going to happen by any means, but I just wanted to like pitch something to him, to be like, this is what I'm thinking, and I think you would be the perfect person for that. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. And I'm not going to say whether or not he said yes or no or anything, because like nothing's happened, but even still, it was something that I always wonder about, like what inspires you to, I guess, work with other artists.
Uh, well, I think when I've tried like making something and then just like trying to get someone else to like make a collab off of it, it never really never usually works. Um,
That's good to know.
but that's just, I don't know. There's also a thing of just like, it's really hard to get people to work on shit. sometimes.
Yeah. Is
Like
it like,
myself included.
do you think that it's something like they have to be there usually? I mean, and thankfully we're over the pandemic, but you did say that you've had a lot of people in and out through like your living space. So do you think that's maybe the biggest influence?
I mean, yeah, there's nothing better than just like both sitting down at a computer and being like, let's make a song. I mean, that's when it happens the most organically. But like a lot of music I make with people is online still. It's just more of like, let's come up with the idea together in real time instead of, uh, just like retroactively, like, I made this idea, now you do an idea.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's your
more
turn.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think like the main workflow is usually like you have one person kind of driving and like making arrangement decisions on stream, and then you have another person that's kind of just backseat like making sounds on the fly while listening to what they're doing that might fit in and just like using the key and the tempo
Yeah.
and kind of just doing whatever. Like, oh, okay, maybe if I made like this like lead right here, that would be cool. And you just make that, and then you just like flip them either a shared Dropbox or just like send a link or whatever.
Hmm.
If you have a shared Dropbox, it's just like you can have a folder that just like updates in Ableton. So you'll just like make something, and then you'll be like, all right, check the Dropbox, and like on the fly, the person who's driving will just like drag in this new sound and then start cutting it up or whatever. And so, yeah, a lot of my process is either just like sitting there cutting up shit that somebody's handing me, or making shit to cut up for somebody else, or even presets and patches and whatever. You can send
Right.
anything, but um, usually just sending like WAV files over Dropbox in a synced folder is like the easiest way to just keep it moving, because you can do stuff in MIDI on your end and then just bounce it out
Right.
immediately.
I'm so glad that you said that because in my experience with you, the majority of our lessons have been you doing just that, you know? Of course, like with me having a lot of questions and stuff in between, but that has been incredibly valuable to like have, I guess, your teacher, it doesn't matter who it is, but whoever you're taking lessons from, be like, all right, here's what I got. And then a lot of times, you were just like working on it and changing it into something else and covering like little ideas and stuff in between, which I wanted to kind of circumvent back to the reminder of like, yo, for one, again, Frequent, thank you so much for like joining me today. But two, like guys, book a lesson with him, or book several lessons with him. Like learn from this person. Like it's not just somebody that makes really good music. It's somebody that's like, here's knowledge, and they're willing to share it, and like you will get stuff out of it. Like book a lesson. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I guess,
Appreciate that.
dude, no, for sure. Like I've been really lucky. So you and Hudson and actually Copycat are the remainder of the people that I have not been able to have on the channel. So I still want to get Hudson on sometime. I still want to get Andre on it sometime because he was the first person I ever booked a lesson with. But I've had both Zane and Cage, which, talking about like an upcoming artist, I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but he's part of the South African.
Yeah, the South Africa boys.
Yeah, dude, like those guys are insane. But also a really nice person that's like, that I think that you would really vibe with. But he's been on the channel, and I've had some other guests and stuff, but I really want to just bring you all here because it's really cool to talk about what I got from you and how you think about things and why that's so important and how it relates to people understanding how I teach, right? Or where my information comes from. It's like a solidification, it's like I'm teaching class, but then you come in like grandmaster or something and is like, all right, when I showed you this is what I meant, which is super cool. It's almost like seminar-esque, which is, what we usually do in martial arts. But even still, man, please, like, come back on the channel sometime. I was going to ask, was there anything that you wanted to like give to chat or to me? And would it be okay to maybe take a couple of questions before we like, wrap this up?
Yeah, totally. I think main things, yeah, just like plug the website, and I'm gonna be making some tutorials. I'm gonna be streaming. I'm trying to just get more involved in general because I have not been on that grind recently, but I'm not doing any shows for the next couple months. So I'm going to be streaming and doing some, again, that course I'm talking about, like trying to really build like a solid foundational sound design course that covers like anything from like basses to glitches to like physical modeling and instruments and stuff like that. But approaching it from like a bottom up approach where it's all self-contained and like in theory you could just use this as like a high quality reference that's just objective information, not like an end all be all solution to all your problems, but would definitely give you kind of a basis through which you can design whatever sounds you need for the most part, honestly.
Yeah.
And then from there, I want to do like a big arrangement series, and I'm still like working out the kinks of how I want to do that. And basically, what the lessons are is like personally catered arrangement lessons ultimately, and then like yeah, if you want to make a sound, just make a sound. But yeah, just want to plug all that because that's definitely I'm trying to shift more into this world for the next couple months, and you know, just kind of try and make some more content that's actually valuable and kind of grapple more with what that even means and how to navigate the education space and provide something that's a little different and a little more I don't know, just kind of catered towards giving people the resources to go and do shit on their own instead of trying to like spoon feed a specific technique, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this talk that we had is obviously something that'll come up as public. And if you want me to send you like a copy of it or something that could may or may not be helpful to you, just let me know. But I think that this is a great primer leading up to those things because, for one, I know like you've already taught this stuff. Like you've taught a lot of it to me, and not even through that many lessons. You know, you're not somebody that I like took thousands of lessons with. You gave me like a really good solid few, and I try to take that and just run with it as much as possible. But I think that this is great because it helps people understand the connection about, for one, how you teach, what to expect, but also in the sense of you are not somebody that's complacent. You're somebody that's still growing. So it might look even more refined by the time it actually comes out. Do you think that it would be helpful? Like, obviously this is something that I'm going to buy because whatever you put out that's educational, I watch/buy, but would it be helpful if I did some kind of like review on it or something, or gave some kind of,
Yeah, sure. I
yeah,
would like you can do whatever that'd be awesome. And I would love to extend like a discount to your community or whatever. Like I want to be involved with all you guys and share the knowledge and
yeah.
just be involved in whatever capacity I can, honestly.
I think like, and that's really awesome. And I really appreciate that. I think really is, just if you find yourself having the time again, just come visit again and be present on this channel and kind of treat it like it's yours. That's the best way I can describe that, is like treat this channel like it's your home, and treat it
Oh, thanks, man.
like my community is your community, because that's how I feel about it anyways. Anybody that knows about me knows about you and my teachers. And that's why I'm hoping to get all those people on. And like, I also want to get Chi on here at some point if possible. But
Who are
just
the others? Hudson and Andre?
Hudson and Andre are the last two that have been like direct teachers from me that I haven't been able to. I've talked to Hudson, and he's kind of, I told him that when the budget allows, I'll bring him on. I just can't get in contact with Andre, but I know that he's super busy.
Man, Andre is supposedly coming here. We'll see if it actually works out with visa stuff. But I can't wait to meet him in person for the first time. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. And I have you guys done anything together? Well, you don't. I don't even know if you even want to give that out. But I'm curious to know if you guys have worked on anything beyond Tom's Battery, because I know that you guys are all kind of, well, it's the Upscale family. But I always get excited to hear about like when people that I've had some personal experience with are like working on things together.
Well, we made this other tune, or we started another tune like a couple years after, maybe just like a year after, I can't remember. And it kind of sat there, but Andre went through like he like deleted his SoundCloud for a bit and like kind of disappeared from music world for a while.
Yeah.
And now he's back and like completely 180'd and is fully in it again, which is awesome. And I've finally been talking to him and trying to work on music and like reconnect and do all that. But realistically, we don't have anything other than this one other song that I've played it out a few times actually.
Dope. Yeah.
It's fucking sick, but yeah, I do want to finish that at some point, hopefully with him.
I think
And
it's
then I'm always down to start stuff, so we'll see what happens.
yeah, I think it's just cool that, you know, that he's in a place where he's ready to return to music and that he's got a community to support him. And I hope that you know, I would never expect any triangulation or like, yo, tell him I said this, because I'll message him myself. But I hope that he feels like welcome as well, and that that he's got the support that he needs for just staying motivated or whatever keeps him in the game. Because, well, shit, we miss him. I miss him, you know.
I know, dude. Everyone misses him. Yeah, I'm really optimistic about him releasing music again and coming to the States, and
Man, that'd be incredible.
yeah,
And for you,
I'm
you
sure
know,
he would come on at some point. So
if you ever find yourself in Vegas, because that's where I reside, please let me know, and you know, let me know how I can make this a home for you too. But yeah, I guess dude, thank you again, by the way. But does anybody else have any questions or anything that you all wanted to ask Frequent while he's here? I'm sure that he'll come back at some time, but he's here right now, so you know, ask him something.
yeah, questions is good. Is this just on YouTube or is this on Twitch as well?
This is just on YouTube. I did the restream
Okay.
thing for a while, but I would actually, that was something that I was gonna tell you as well, is that if you stream on YouTube, for one, I can tag you or I can redirect the stream to you, but also it's a lot easier for people to find you because there's a much better discoverability than there is on Twitch. And that's something that we could discuss later if you're interested in about it. But that's why I stream on
I don't
YouTube as
know.
opposed to Twitch now.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I don't know anything about streaming world these days, so that would be good.
Yeah, any way that I could, you know, be helpful to you or to the other people trying to put out content, just let me know. But does yeah, the Discord is the upscale Discord. I think that there's a link on your Twitch channel. Yeah.
On the upscale Twitch, there should be.
Yeah. Put on a dress
Upscale
and
Discord is in. You might need an invite. Uh, we give them out periodically, but like, it's around. If you talk to people who are in it, I'm sure you know somebody who's in it, and if you talk to them, they can probably get you in.
yeah, I hear you. Where do you think neuro as a genre is heading to? Where do you want it to head? Uh,
I don't think it's heading anywhere.
yeah, it's here to stay. If anything, it's like it's almost weird because I feel like the community got bigger, but it still hasn't taken off as far as like a critically acclaimed or received like thing. Like I feel like even hip hop with sound design is still taboo in like the mainstream world.
I don't know. I'm starting to hear neurobases everywhere, dude. I hear them in like movies and shit, and I'm like, what?
Really?
Just use a straight like Reese bass.
I haven't heard. Well, I haven't seen a movie in a long time, so that's my own undoing. But
Wait, really?
no, dude, I never watch movies. I play games, but I never watch movies. I'm too busy watching
Yeah,
people
that's fair.
stream or like watching tutorials on learning shit. Hence,
Yeah,
what
no,
this whole
that's understandable.
what this whole
Um,
conversation was about.
yeah, I feel like honestly, neuro and like heavy music in general, and like I don't know, I'm starting to hear neuro basses in other genres too, like in the mainstream dubstep world,
Mhm.
as like one shots, and like I don't know, it's just around for sure. I think it's in its current form gonna remain this like pseudo underground thing. Um, but I think it's pretty accessible. I mean, look at what Lee is doing. Look at Cheese Career. Like he's able to slot in against huge dubstep shit. And like, I know he's making a lot of dubstep and stuff now, but like, it's all halftime roots, like neuro shit. You know what I mean? So, uh, I don't know. There's definitely a lot of this kind of established meta that I don't know. I think it'll take kind of the same logical path that dubstep took, where it'll like continually become less complex and more just about like having a few really crazy sounds over drums.
You know,
Um, yeah.
that's really cool that you say that too, because that's something that I've been inadvertently talking about with people of like, I've sent you my patches and stuff and all that. And I found that actually did you ever, sorry, dude, so many thoughts at once, but did you ever check out Eccles' course on Bass Gorilla? I wasn't sure if that was something that you were ever interested or not, but
I have not.
so something Harvey and Tom said when they were talking about designing Neurobass was they were like, you don't want to just have this all the time because then it loses its novelty, and you want it to be like just a sound design highlight or just in one specific instance. And I'm like, fuck, man, like there's so much truth within that, and making a whole riff over like weird wonky sounds has been really fucking hard. And I would tell anybody that if you're trying to like make your neuro shit work within music, just start with it being a fill, or start with it being more of an effect, as opposed to being like, oh, I make neuro music and I got to make it, simple is better. And I think what you're saying really kind of aligns with that.
Yeah, I mean that's like the story of all the neurohop forum songs, right? Like, you have a bunch of really cool bass sounds, but they don't really sound like music.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
a bunch of sounds cut up over drums, and that's exactly what it sounds like. And then you listen to like a Cone Sound song, and it's like, damn, this is like this has a melody.
right,
And then when you're 14 and you're sitting there trying to figure out like how do I make a good melody, and you like don't know anything about that,
right.
it's just kind of not a thing. So I remember being in this position of like really thinking that once I had that sound, it would just be a matter of like putting it in there and there you go. But realistically, the sounds become very secondary, and it's all about like you could hand someone the most shit sounds ever, and if they're a good composer, they'll make you something compelling out of it. So
Placement. Yep.
yeah, you end up in this spot where again, just you gotta arrange, you gotta put the clips in there good.
Yeah, intent. Why do you want to use a neuro bass? Why do you want to place
Exactly.
it right
Do you
there?
have a real use for it, or are you just making them and then? I
Yeah,
mean, this is how it goes. Really, I've done this 10 billion times. Ready? You start the song. All right, I need some drums. You make a kick and a snare and some like break sample or some hats or some shit, and then you're like, all right, that's pretty good. Now I need some sounds. You open in X synth, make a bass sound, mud pie, and then you're like, all right, I'm ready to start the song. And then you just sit there and cut that clip over those drums for like 2 hours, and it never really sounds like anything.
yep.
And then you're like, all right, well, fuck me, I guess. And then you just like close it and rinse and repeat.
And
Like
then
I've done that so many times, and I think what I've come to realize is that you need a musical idea, and that can be something really, really simple, but anything other than a bass is usually a good catalyst for an idea. And that fact alone makes me wonder why I put so much emphasis on those basses to begin with, and have realized that like, you know, if you just think about it more ambiguously, like you just need like any sort of
fill.
tonal
Yep.
interest
Yeah. Tonal interest.
plays
I really like
a lot.
that.
Yeah.
That's the whole fucking thing about neurobass in the first place, is it just fucks with your head, and you're like, oh, I gotta have that. I gotta have that sound. I gotta do the Cohen sound bass. I gotta do this. And it's like, nah, man, like writing with, I haven't made a video about this, but low key, like writing a song with just 808s has been so helpful in figuring out how to write better songs, because you strip away all of that, you know, intricacy of sounds that you recognize through your brain, and you have to focus on the vibe and the feel of it. Which I'm not saying like go write trap or anything, but just writing with 808s in general, or even just the sub, has been super helpful, because it really makes you focus on that intention behind what you want to do with your low end. And that's just one way that I would suggest personally. But uh,
Yeah, I mean, this okay, so here's the thing I've learned from watching other people. And like I think so many people have a similar framework that I do, which is like thinking of the sound in this abstraction where it's just like this piece that I'm putting in there and cutting over the drums. And then you watch somebody who comes from like a musical background, who's like a beat maker, and they like have some idea for a melody or a riff, and you watch them just like input a musical idea in a really simple sound
mhm.
over a beat, and you're like, wow, that sounds like way more like a song than me trying for like hours to make something coherent out of
That's the
like
beat,
really
right?
complex sounds.
It's fucking
Yeah.
in straight time of do 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 do, and you're like, why can't I do that?
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's never even about it being complicated or difficult. It's just like there's an actual idea in there, and that's the thing that you can't just like force an idea into a clip unless that clip has like some melodic thing going on. Like if you just hold F and then play a bunch of filter resonances, guess what? Your song's gonna sound like F
Like
with a
F.
bunch of
Yep.
filter resonances.
That was like one
And
of the first things you ever said to me. Is like, man, if you just expecting to push F and win, like you got a rude awakening coming or something along those lines. And I've definitely stolen that from
can
you.
do that, but then it's just like, okay, now you're talking about like it's purely about like rhythm and timbre. Like you're not even talking about melody anymore. And so you have to like go so hard on rhythm and timbre that it's the motif comes through that and is interesting in this other way. And that's like totally valid. But
Yeah.
also really hard, just in a different way.
I was talking with Kunis about it on Monday, but we pretty much said the exact same thing. Like, if you're gonna make a song, and this is like working against you in so many ways, but if you're gonna make a song just off rhythm and timbre, like that's where the production value like really has to shine because you don't have anything for people to hold on to. So you're essentially just trying to impress somebody with like how fucking cool your
Yeah.
sounds are, and it's
Dude,
so
that would cut it in the old days. That was the
yeah.
thing. Like that's how I have a career is because like even if you could just make the sounds at one point in time, that was enough because people couldn't even do that. So now times have changed, and it's like if you uh anyone can make the sounds because you have YouTube,
Right.
and so it's purely about what you do with them now, and that's that's the game people don't want to play because it's way again you can't teach it, so there's no just like, oh, I'll go watch YouTube for 30 minutes and now I know how to make the song good.
Yeah, look
Like
at this cool sound. Yay, I won. It's not like that
yeah,
anymore. Yeah.
it's not as and the content is just like super murky. Like I don't really know the state of YouTube these days much in general, but like I can't imagine there's like a comprehensive way to like teach yourself arrangements that's posted to YouTube that would be relevant to like a niche of electronic music producers, but maybe.
No, there's not. And believe me, I've scoured. And now what I do personally is I try to look up even things of like classic composition or even composition of other genres and look at what those essence like what the foundations of those are and try to be like, all right, well, how does that translate to like, modern sounds of today or like, stuff something like you or I would try to put together. And there's a huge aspect of translation and it's very difficult.
Yeah, well, and that's why I'm saying like I think it's worth it to just go learn those things for what they are. Like, okay, actually try making like have you ever used like a drum machine or like what are those Arturia or like a Digitact
I have an
or
MPC and I compose on that now.
yeah, like that sort of workflow. Like if you start, or even just using a sequencer in general, and like putting sounds that are just like pre-pitched to different pitches, or like have a melody cooked into them, and then you're arranging it, but you have to use the limitation of a
Right.
sequencer. And you start doing that, and then it's just like a totally different framework, and you start to understand like
The
why
fundamentals,
certain
yeah.
music has the aesthetic it does because it's all like built around the restrictions of a sequencer, and then that opens up a bunch of interesting possibilities because now you're everything you do is bound to like a MIDI trigger essentially,
Right.
and so you're you're not like writing in this framework of cutting up clips anymore.
Or 16
Uh,
sounds, right? On a pad. Like you got 16 sounds, make a tune.
yeah, exactly. Like any sort of restriction like that just apply like changes your entire uh and you see people like Beardy Man. You seen Beardy Man?
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. Like watch him make a better song than most people in 5 seconds with his mouth. And you're just like, oh, well, that
Yeah.
really
That's his Ableton.
yeah, and it's like it's so much more like obviously he can't do really everything has to be loop oriented and that's a restriction he has to work with.
Yeah.
That everything is like super gridded and like 4/4 loop mode. But through that, I mean that's what most electronic music is already anyways. So if you're talking about making like genre oriented music, this dude can sit there and make like, oh, you want a good drum and bass song? Give me 20 seconds and he'll make you one.
Right.
And it's like,
It's
well,
it's crazy.
shit. That just shows you that like it's way less about having perfect sounds and like all of that. It's really just like,
Fine.
can you intuit where to put the sounds and how long does it take you to go from intuiting it to actually placing it? And if you're doing everything by hand in a box and you resample every sound you make instead of ever using MIDI and everything is a long cut and super arbitrary, like you're just working in a really bizarre workflow that like historically just didn't exist and is not very conducive to making things musical. So like when you go and make other shit that is not that and take completely different routes to get there, like working on a sampler
Hmm.
or MPC or a sequencer rather, and or like using a hardware synth or whatever, or you know just completely changing your workflow within the software to be like on the fly and less like give yourself 30 seconds to make each sound, you know.
Right.
These sort of arbitrary restrictions completely shift the focus away from like the toiling and doing specific things
The
and
tinkering.
like thinking way too hard about it, and
Yeah.
then you're really just like in a real-time intuitive thing. And that's where people are able to come up with good ideas, right? It's not when you slowly change things over the course of 2 hours. It's where you're like, oh, this idea, I want to try this, and it takes you 1 second to try it, and if you don't like it, you just immediately undo it, and then you're
Right.
like, I'm gonna try this, and then you try that, and then you know, it's like you're able to test 10 ideas in 2 minutes and then move on instead of
Yeah, thinking about how to
incrementally
try the
trying to
first
judge
idea.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm. Sorry, I was just like, yeah, I know
No, no,
exactly
you
what
get
you
it. You
mean.
get it.
So, if it's okay, I've got two more questions for you.
Yeah, hit me.
The first one is, how did you come up with the idea for Dream Recall? It's so creative. I'm going to ask the second one right after this too, because it might be easier to answer. But somebody or Weston says, how did you make that weird rooster sound in that one song that was just a sampler or effects or what? Which tune?
Wait, what? The rooster sound.
Yeah, it would help if you knew which tune, but yeah, I guess maybe while we wait for them to answer that one, yeah, could you tell us a bit about like what went into Dream Recall?
I guess I don't know if they're referring to the title track or to the whole album.
I think the album as a whole.
Yeah. So, um, I feel like Dream Recall as a concept out, and this is like why I haven't released a second album yet, is uh, I feel like conceptually it's like kind of half baked because a lot of it was like I had no intention to make an album. I just like was making songs and then uh about halfway through making them was like, oh wait, I should be writing an album right now. And then kind of retrofit these themes of lucid dreaming into the rest of the music, but like it really wasn't like I had a whole story and all of that I had in my head, but I don't think it was really translated through the music
That's crazy
very
to hear you
well,
say that.
if at all.
I mean, it it's so crazy about like what you think goes into your own music versus how people receive it, which is something that we could maybe, I don't know, talk about another time because it's a whole different can of worms. But specifically about Dream Recall, the tune, they say the orchestra elements and like it's so creative. Was there something specific about that like did
Okay,
you
yeah. So the last song I think is the best song because that's where I actually figured out that was one of the only things that was like written after the rest of the album
yeah,
like already existed. So I already had the concept. I had like touched on these themes throughout the entire album. And then that song like might as well be the album, honestly. It's like me figuring out what I was going for aesthetically. Um and so the idea behind it was like to kind of go into this like dream state. So the whole record is based off of lucid dreaming, which is I assume you're familiar, but for those who aren't, is like you wake up inside of this is a real thing, by the way.
yeah,
You like wake up inside of a dream. Like this is like Inception, but you can actually like become aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming.
lucid, right?
Through,
Yeah,
yeah, through these like very specific strategies. And then if you do that, you can kind of become a god in your dreams and you can kind of just like do whatever the fuck you want. Um and I was really into this when I was in high school. Um and I used to write you are awake on the palm of my hand in Sharpie like in class. I would do that. And so like throughout the day I would just like constantly see this on my hand. And this is like one of the ways you can so in my dream, because I'd like done this so many times, I would like look at my hand and I would not ever because like text and shit is like totally fucked when you're dreaming.
yeah,
But I couldn't really read it, but I would like see the like my hand and like some weird black smudge on it, and I would like be like, "What? Why is my hand like that?" in my dream. And then
mm,
that would like trigger from me just habitually like looking at that in class and just like being like, "You are awake, you are awake." uh it would like trigger me into being able to wake up inside of my dream. And that was like the inspiration for the album was like the process of having a lucid dream and it going from like this really like wondrous interesting thing into like this really like dark not so great thing. Because what happened to me was like my sleep schedule is like really bad, but it's always been really bad. Even when I have to wake up at like 6:30 for
yeah,
school, I would still go to bed at like 2, 3 a.m. So
yeah. I
I was
know.
literally just like sleep deprived. I drink a fuckload of coffee and then I would go to sleep after writing music all night after getting home from school. And then I would lucid dream, and that would like the problem with that is like almost every time, at least for me, like I would have like a whole experience, and then like suddenly it would just become like too like I just actually wake up.
Hmm.
Um, and then I like couldn't get back to sleep very well. So I was just like completely destroying the already minuscule amount of sleep I was already getting. And I think part of the reason I was able to lucid dream in the first place so easily was just because I was like so fucking sleep deprived all the time anyways.
Have
Which
have
is really like terrible for you. Like
Yeah, I know, right?
really bad for you. So I was doing that for a while, and through the course of doing that, like decided I wanted to embed that experience into the album. And then by the end of the album, I very much was like, I can never, like, this is so bad for me. I need to stop doing this, and I'm never gonna do this again. Um, so I just completely bailed. But through that, I actually like started getting sleep and like kind of became more of a real person. And so I was able to kind of cobble together everything I had done up until that point. I also lost a hard drive, so
Oh no.
most most of the album was lost. before I even started that song. And I just had to work off of renders. And so I was really at this point of like I had to start from scratch. I like stopped lucid dreaming and was in this point where uh I was ready to like execute what I thought the main idea of the album was, which is like going between these like realistic instruments and like real spaces that like are grounded, and then
Yeah.
like switching into just like these totally artificial, like weird trippy spaces at the same time. And a lot of the instrumentation of that, like I and this is another thing I realized early on, is just like, well, I honestly am not very good at making music. I'm mostly just good at making sounds. So I should like hit up some people who actually know what the fuck they're doing. And that's why I got Alexander Panos to do the strings in the very beginning, and he like wrote it all out in score and got someone out of school to record it. And I was like blown away by that because there's no way I could have
Yeah.
really done that myself. The only other thing I had was the cello on the Porter Robinson remix, which oh man, I miss Trevor. Trevor Waldorf, if you're watching this, I love you. I miss you.
Yeah. Say hello
But
and
he did that
rekindle.
cello.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I guess some other quick questions about that was someone asked if you've ever had sleep paralysis before, and they were also wondering if you've ever done astral projection.
I've had sleep paralysis one time. Uh, in that period, actually, that was honest. That experience was part of the reason that I, uh, I was like, yeah, no, I can't be doing this.
Yeah, I hear you.
Um,
That really makes sense of like how you also kind of have that mindset about like really having to make shit work though, right? Like, I mean, it would have been really easy to just either give up on the album entirely or just put out what render you have. But like through that process of, I imagine now how much going back and cutting and reworking all the stuff that you put down. And I think that you and I had to talk about that as well, about how you stem stuff super often and like reuse. It's not even just a matter of resampling, but like taking out full renders of things and repurposing that. That makes a lot of sense. Weston was saying it was Pumplesnout that had a rooster sound in there. I'm not even sure. I know that song really well, and I'm still not sure what sound he's talking about.
way too many sounds in that.
Yeah, and so many switch ups to like different basses and stuff. I don't know. Does any sound seem like a rooster to you in your tune?
Uh,
Because I think of like, like I'm
oh,
like,
oh,
what?
they're probably thinking of when it goes doop boop, but that's just me going doop boop.
Your sound just did something super weird. I don't know what that was. That was really cool though. Yo, okay, speaking of, what the hell was Japanese turkey legs about?
Japanese turkey knees.
Sorry,
The
Japanese
name of
turkey
it?
knees. Yeah. What the heck was
Like
that
what?
about?
What do you mean? What's it about?
Like, where did you, like, what, how did that even become a concept?
Uh, um, we were just trolling.
Really? I love that
We
song.
we just want to make it really dumb, and so uh, we like needed to save the project file, and I just like named it that, and then uh, we were working with Johnny on it, and we were just like we kept trolling Johnny because we kept making the song really insane, but then like putting something really dumb, but then being like we refuse to take out the dumb thing.
Yeah.
And then so part of that was like I put that vocal line in the very beginning.
Yeah, I know that was you. It would change your life, man. Talking about
Yeah, it's
Japanese
gonna change your
turkeys.
life.
I love
And
that,
then
man.
we sent it to Johnny, and he's like, ha ha ha, very funny. Uh, yeah, and then I don't think he thought it was gonna be in the actual song, but we just never, never took that out.
I love that, man. And even the memes at the end of like the dude that's making the turkey sound and like the bird up and like,
Yeah.
yo, I'll send it to you later, but have you seen the Something About series where somebody literally makes like this huge thing out of the bird up meme? I think that like you'll get a huge kick out of it if you
No,
haven't
you
seen
should
it.
send me that. That sounds good.
I will. It'll change your life, man.
Wait, have you seen the original? Have you seen the video from the guy who's making the turkeys gobble?
I have that was a Vine, right?
Oh my God, was it?
I think it
I don't
was a Vine.
remember.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
man, that was top class Vine choice.
this is a classic. See, I
Yeah.
miss putting memes at the end of the song. That's the type of shit uh, like you talk about, like I could have just given up on the album or whatever, but like that period of time, I was so inspired to make music. Like although I was really upset about my computer and was obviously like, fuck me, I just lost so much. As soon as I got kind of the pieces recovered, I got a brand new laptop and was, able to, you know, actually write without my shit choking out on me. And
Yeah.
that was awesome. I was like, damn, all right. Not only do I know what I actually want to do now, but I have like a brand new computer and I can uh I can just do it. I can actually just do it.
Yeah.
And I have my friends to help me. No, I just have Alexander to help me for that one. But like, I don't know. I learned so much through working with like Lucas, Clockvice,
Mm.
uh, and with oh man, I miss Clement, uh, Sumac, the guitarist, and like, dude, he just sent me like a 45-minute recording of him just like playing random shit on the guitar.
That's
It was all
awesome.
so good.
And one of my favorite tunes from your album was that tune that you did with Clockvice, and that was something that actually went into our lessons when you were teaching me how to make a lot of those experimental sounds. And then what was really dope was like after I took that from you and I did a lesson with Hudson, he was like, okay, now here's how you like taught me like the process of how to make the sounds, and then Hudson was like, okay, here's how you make an arrangement out of it, and pretty much like blasted everything about arrangement to hell and was just like, yeah, bro, you just do anything. And I was like, great.
Yeah,
this,
exactly.
yeah, I was like,
Just
this is
do anything you want.
amazing. And that's how Tales of the Coffin came about, which was, like horribly mixed and horribly, like just all shrill ass sounds. But fuck, it was so fun to write. And I've got one tune off of the album my only album that I put out. The first song is Like That, because that's an homage to both you and Hudson about like, that's still part of me. And that's something that I will always have and try to like, I really want to combine stuff like that dips in and out of your typical arrangement with stuff that does break those barriers and say like, fuck arrangement, fuck drums, fuck everything, just feel it out, bro. And like go off a vibe. And it was one of the best lessons anybody ever could have given me in music. And thank you guys for that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to see it like when you realize that like I don't know, you could just use a crazy time signature or like get rid of the grid entirely or like not use drums or
Yeah.
just kind of abandon the conventions that holds you into that specific. I mean, let's be honest, almost all electronic music is like 4/4 F minor with 5 sections: intro, build, drop, breakdown,
Right.
drop, outro.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was actually 5, but
I think
uh,
just like that was something that Hudson gave me too, was he was like, yo, like you're trying to conform all these experimental sounds into a 4/4 time signature, and that's why it feels like suffocated, so if you've got a phrase where you make this sound, like let the sound breathe and let it have its own space. And then when the conversation somebody has, like when the sentence stops or when the phrase stops, then just like having a conversation like this, right? We have a rhythm with how we're exchanging words. Pick up where it feels natural on when to introduce the next phrase or the next sound or something. And fuck, man, Hudson
yeah,
is, you guys both, man, like the stuff that I get from you all, it can't be taught, but I got something, and it's very profound, and it's fucking crazy. Long story short.
yeah. I mean, even if you can't just like completely derive how to do it from watching somebody, it definitely like at least for me has been a lot of just realizing uh how narrow my approach was and realizing like, oh yeah, I could just Look how
Say
easy
fuck it.
that
Yeah.
was. Man, that was real easy for them. Maybe I
Yeah.
should just try doing this differently or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think the more different somebody's workflow is, even if it's like not entirely successful or like something you care about, ultimately, it just opens up so many potential new paths to take to create, you know?
Yeah, it's releasing that inhibition, because when you don't care, you are more open to, as you said before in this interview, of like not being precious and being like, I don't care what the outcome is, I just want to see where it leads. And the more that you play into that, the more, I think, the more paths that you will find.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, man, I think that's a really good place to kind of call it here, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
Dude, fuck, man, thank you so much. I'm so glad that I finally got you on the channel. I talk about
Yeah,
you a
thanks for
lot,
having me, man.
dude. Yeah, man, and I'm glad that it was personal. You know, I know that you have a lot of production secrets and blah 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 and this and that, but just being able to be like, yo, how are you, Nolan? You know, like frequent and all that, and just have a conversation that means, and like figure out the way that you and I talk is the same way as my lessons have been with you, at least for the most part. And that's really cool. And I'm glad that people got to see that, because this is how much insight you have to offer, whether you believe it's a lot or a little. And to me, I'm like, it's like way the fuck up here. There's a lot of stuff that I want to look back on what you said as well that I would like to revisit. I'm glad everybody has the chance to do that. Yeah, I guess, do you have anything else that you want to end with, or, you know, anything else? I guess, like, come back soon, please.
Yeah, no, I'll be back, and like I said, I'll be around trying to be more active on Twitch, or I guess maybe YouTube, and pop over here. And you guys are always welcome to come hang. And then yeah, gonna be doing, hopefully, like soon, I'm gonna be releasing this course and putting up some just free content, some tutorials and stuff. I
Awesome.
really want to do a faceplant 2 video because I still haven't done that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and people should check out what you've already put up anyways, because I mean, there's a lot of that I still believe that you use today, that like it's still relevant, all the information that you have.
yeah, totally.
I have you tagged. Your channel is tagged in this, so you probably already have gotten like a notification or something. But for anybody else, Frequent not only has the Twitch channel, I just linked his website. I tagged him in the description for his channel as well, so go check out his tutorials. But I really think the best way that you could learn is to book a freaking lesson with him, and
Yeah.
let him touch your artistry and be open-minded. And if you do that and you embrace that stuff and you really consider like the words and like the mindset, even if it isn't necessarily what you thought you were looking for, you're going to get so much more out of it. And I know this because that was my experience, and I'm so glad I was able to kind of communicate that with you about that. But yeah, would you mind just sticking around for like maybe 1 or 2 minutes after I end the stream? And then for
Yeah, of
everybody
course.
else, you guys, thank you so much. I'm glad that we had a good turnout for him, because I mean, yeah, dude, you more than deserve it. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream right here, and then Nolan, I'll have a quick chat with you after.
All right, thanks, everybody. Appreciate you, chat. I'll see you guys around.
Yeah,
Thanks.
see you guys. Okay, the stream's over, dude. Thank you so much.